Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Doomsday. I have a super survival system. Chapter 81. None of the three people who returned to the sanctuary looked pretty. Dage, how is it? George was unable to hide words. He didn't notice the unsightly expressions of Enkai and others, and asked directly. It has been resolved. That Black is dead. Kent reluctantly smiled and said. Yeah, very good. He finally died. George, Joanna, and Emma all cheered loudly. Carter and Carlyle also smiled. In any case, the enemy of the sanctuary companion is the own enemy, and the death of the enemy is a happy thing. Instead, Leo stared at own big brother. Dage, what happened? Compared with other people, his mind is obviously deeper and his observation is more careful. Hearing his questioning, the cheering three stopped. Carter and Carol also put away their joyful expressions. Blake died, but he committed suicide. When I asked him why the C&T building suddenly attacked other survivors, he shot himself directly. We didn't have time to stop. Huh, what does it matter? George didn't quite understand, and asked subconsciously. Fool, this shows that there must be some ulterior secret in the science and technology building. In order not to reveal the secret, he would rather commit suicide. Leo answered for Kent. George then showed a dazed expression. Then, what shall we do next? Unexpectedly, the joy is so short-lived, and there is not much celebration yet, and the bigger problem lies in front of us. Kent did not speak, but looked at Enkai. Enkai stepped forward. The soldiers are here to cover the water and earth. What we have to do now is to build the shelter. The C&T building is some distance away from our shelter. Even if they detect Black's death and send someone to find it, it will take at least 3 to 4. In days, less than a week will be a nuclear explosion. As long as we persist in these days, even if the people in the science and technology building want to retaliate against us, it will be very difficult. So don't worry, we just need to do our own thing. Quote. The system gave Enkai great confidence. Even if the people from the Science Union building really came, even if their firepower was unprecedentedly strong, the defense of the shelter would not be built. Not only is the mountain thick enough and the protective door is enough to get acquainted with, he can also arrange more defensive weapons and traps to ensure that even if the people in the C&T building can come to the shelter, they must first walk in front of the ghost gate. Losing the soldiers and breaking the generals will do. What's more, he believes that the people in the C&T building are not fools. Although he doesn't know how they control these black suits, the nuclear explosion at this time is tantamount to sending people to death in vain. If the people sent out can't dare to go back before the nuclear explosion and return to a place that is safe enough, then the people sent out are directly equivalent to being lost. If they were replaced by Enkai, he would never do that. Therefore, he is not worried about the incident itself. What he is worried about is only the secret hidden behind the C&T building. In addition, he is really curious about the way the C&T building controls the black suit. He didn't think that the leader of the science and technology building also had a system. If a system like a system really broke the street, it would be boring. But if there is no system, how can they make these black suits not afraid of death? In the previous battle, he had been using the perspective. He watched these black suits continue to charge when he knew that the road ahead would die, knowing that he had been exposed to the muzzle, or from hiding. Jump out of the land and go to rescue Black. You know, this is the apocalyptic world now. Using family kidnapping or something to control people, not to mention the effect is good, just say that each of these people in black has family members still alive. Enkai does not believe it. 1, 2, 10, and 8 are all justified, but dozens of black suits have family members controlled by the C&T building, which is too exaggerated. Could it be the brainwashing method? This is possible. But it shouldn't be so powerful. Moreover, the news he had always heard before was that the number of people in the Science and Technology Union building was less than 100. Among the 100 people, the leadership must be a part of it. Those who do various tasks, such as those responsible for production, such as construction, such as medical care, such as foreign transactions, such as logistics and for daily management, these also require manpower. How many people can really be used as guards in foreign warfare? Before they raided the shelter in Kent, they lost some of their manpower. Here unexpectedly, another 40 people were lost in one breath. No matter what it looks like, I think this number is too fake. And Kai even wondered whether these black suits were former members of the shelter that joined the C&T building. But he really doesn't want to believe this guess, because once the guess is correct, it means that these people have become diehards of the other party not long after joining the C&T building, or they are just for a single order. The degree to which you can give up your life. This is too ridiculous. So now the threat of the C&T building itself is not the most important thing. The secret hidden behind it is what he really worries about. However, it's no use worrying now. They can do only limited things, just as Kai felt that as long as the management of the science and technology building is not stupid, he will definitely not send people in a short time, and he will not be so stupid at this point. Actively explore something. After all, this kind of thing has little to do with him. If Kent and others hadn't come to ask for help, he didn't even know the abnormality of the science and technology building. Even if the Kellyan building is completely overthrown by zombies tomorrow, and everyone has become zombies, and has undergone abnormal changes, to be honest, Kai will not be threatened. He only needs to hide in the shelter for self-sufficiency, and he can easily withstand most crises, so he is now more concerned about the development of the shelter. Now with the increase in personnel, the previously set configuration is no longer enough. 1 day or 2 days does not matter, but with the arrival of a nuclear explosion, the outside world is no longer suitable for survival, and their chances of going out and letting out the wind will become less and less. So in terms of oxygen alone, it is a problem that needs to be solved urgently. The original plan was 10 rooms, but now it seems that it is obviously not enough. Fortunately, there is still time, so Kai can still walk step by step and eat in one bite. The next day, when the rainfall dropped slightly, Philip, Kent, and George went out and started hunting wild animals. Since we are going to face a nuclear explosion, we must have sufficient material preparations. It does not mean how much we need to store in a warehouse or cold storage. At the very least, we must have the point of sustainable development. Let's talk about eating first. The various vitamins and nutrients required by the human body are very complicated. To say that it is really up to the level before the end, it does not take enough time and energy, even Kai can't do it. Now this time is obviously not enough for him to be comprehensive, so all he can do is to enrich the types of materials as much as possible. In terms of seeds, he is not short of seeds, at least there is no shortage of types. When searching in the old city before, he found a lot of seeds in an agricultural supplies shop. Basically common vegetables are available. This alone prevents him from facing a dilemma in vegetables. In terms of food, potatoes, pumpkins, sweet potatoes and corn can be used as staple foods, but he still prepares wheat and rice, the two most common staple foods. As for other coarse grains, some of them are present, and some are not. This problem is not a big deal. There are really no whole grains, I believe everyone will not mind. After all, this is the end. Let's eat a full stomach first. Who cares about eating healthy or unhealthy? In terms of fruits, there are some canned fruits and some fresh fruits. Some fruits can be planted with seeds, but a large part of them must be planted through transplantation. Seeds are used directly, and the ones that are planted may be crooked. The dates are cracked. This point can be solved if it is solved. The chassis of the original Wild Dog Gang, near the highway entrance, has a large orchard, and basically all kinds of fruits are available. Kai and the others had never been there before, just because the fruit they found was enough to eat. But as the nuclear explosion approaches and the population increases, this must also be considered. But it was still raining outside and the roads were slippery. Driving out was not a good choice, so he didn't send anyone to collect the branches of the fruit trees for the time being. Let's see if the rain can stop in the past few days. If it can stop, it's best. There is no need to take risks for some fruits. Then it's meat. To put it bluntly, in human recipes, food, meat, and vegetables are necessary products. The reason why fruits are not so important is because they can or cannot have them. But the first three are basically indispensable. Food provides carbohydrates, vegetables provide plant fiber, and meat provides animal protein and fat. Of course, lack of one, or less intake, will of course not lead to death, but the importance cannot be ignored. Meat. This is really hard to solve, or that sentence. When there was no high demand before, Kai and Mary could find enough meat just by going out and searching. There was no need to worry about losing meat for a short time. But now in such a situation, it is necessary to develop the breeding industry in the shelter. Wild animals are also good, and domestic livestock are good too. Some animals must be found and successfully raised in the shelter to ensure that everyone will have meat to eat in the future. Philip and the others go out mainly to perform this task. Fortunately, if they are out of the canyon, they will not go far to the west, which is the largest breeding farm around the city. And there is more than one, it is a large area, and many farms are connected together, which is almost a local breeding base. After the end of the day, some beasts were infected with upgraded, and the domestic animals were the same, but there must be some that were not upgraded. What's more, some of them ran out of the farm and re-entered the nature and became semi-wild animals. Taking advantage of this opportunity of rain, no matter whether it is a beast or a half-beast, they will not go out to wander. It happens to be a good opportunity to catch them. Enkai hopes that Philip and the others can harvest enough animals to improve the needs of the shelter. Kent and others went to collect animals to contribute to the sustainable development of the shelter and the richness of the diet. On the other side, Carter and Carol took Joanna and Emma and started sorting the planting boxes. Before Enkai had used a lot of planting boxes, Mary was seriously injured in an attack at the shelter. Finally, on the night when everyone evacuated, she was ransacked by survivors around her. At first glance, it seems that Jason and Naoma got the most planting boxes. But Enkai felt that I am afraid that Tonks was the real winner. This person is currently the only known person in Enkai who can be called a big boss. He not only told Jason and Naoma to push to the front desk, but he hides behind the scenes. More importantly, there are so many survivors in the riverbank area, and there are only a few people who know him, and even among the very few survivors, most of them don't know where this person is hiding. This person has a large number of subordinates, but it is very powerful that others do not know where these subordinates are. In short, this Tonks is a very mysterious person, so mysterious as if it were made up by people, but it doesn't exist at all. If the threat of the science and technology building is obvious, it is like a beast that is madly hungry. Then this Tonks is a poisonous snake, lurking in the dark, and may launch a fatal blow at any time. This kind of guy is often the most dangerous. Oh, this does not mean that the C&T building is not dangerous. The threat to the C&T building is obvious, but the secret behind the C&T building is obviously not small, so the degree of danger is equally invincible. In short, neither of these should be underestimated. Pulled away. Let's talk about other arrangements. Mary and Leo are responsible for today's patrol and guard work. Enkai equipped Leo with a pistol. Leo lost an arm. In fact, he should do simpler tasks, such as operating water purification equipment. Just press the button. It's just that Leo is also a man big and small, and he has dignity and pride, so Enkai took this into consideration and arranged for Leo to work as an internal guard of the shelter, which was easy and not difficult. Curry was sent to collect basic materials around the shelter, such as wood, stone, soil, sand, etc. As for the three little guys, their job is to clean up. This may be the simplest task. As long as they have hands, feet, and brains, they can do it, and it's very intense. In fact, the three little guys should have studied more, but now the shelter is in a hurry, so for the time being, I don't think about studying this kind of problem. Enkai is still expanding the area of the shelter. Now the bedroom does not need to be expanded temporarily. The area is large enough, as long as there are more upper and lower bunks. The area of the restaurant is also sufficient, but the table and kitchen utensils are not enough, so some equipment needs to be added. The water purifier is not enough. This also requires additional equipment, an extra water purifier, and then an extra pipe leading to the underground river. The generator set needs to be set up. There are several types of generators provided by the system, such as fuel generators, oil generators, bioenergy generators, geothermal generators, hydroelectric generators, wind generators, solar panels, nuclear power generators. Both fuel and fuel oil are easy to explain. One is to use solid fuels such as wood and coal, and the other is to use oil and gas fuels such as oil and natural gas. Bioenergy generators use biological waste, and kitchen waste is the basic material. They are made into biofuel blocks through special devices, and then these biofuel blocks are put into special components of the biogenerator, and finally used to generate electricity. Water power, wind power and solar power also need no explanation. As the name suggests, they are three different power generation methods. The final nuclear power generator, logically speaking, is the best way to generate electricity. After all, it consumes less fuel, has extremely high power generation efficiency, and is also very stable. But unfortunately, the manufacturing level of this generator is too high, and there is currently no fuel, so I can only look at it. Enkai finally chose the fuel generator, because the biogas produced by the biogas converter can also be used for the fuel generator. You only need to make relevant choices when making it. For Enkai, biogas should be the cheapest fuel for some time in the future. Bioenergy generators are better in theory, but similarly, this level of generators cannot be manufactured at present. The level still limits his development. Although he has worked hard to break through, in the actual life, the level is still seriously insufficient. The generator needs a special room. Carter is an electrical engineer. He has the electrical skill in his skills. If he has this skill, if he controls the generator, the power generation efficiency will be ascension and the consumption will be reduced. Of course, except for Enkai, other people are unaware of this. So Carter will be a full-time employee here in the future. These people's skills, in addition to the meaning they represent, according to different skills, the effect of entering different places to work is not the same. For example, if Carol has the skills of a teacher, she will be more efficient when she teaches culture classes, and the student's understanding ability will be enhanced to a certain extent, and the degree of concentration will also be ascension. Coupled with her own teaching ability, if added together, the increase is quite good. In addition, Carol should use the classroom, and the learning room provided by the system is to help the members of the shelter to master other skills. For example, Mary can learn medical skills. She originally didn't have this skill. If she learns by herself, she will need to reach a certain level before she can transform into a skill. The difficulty is relatively high. But if you use the study room, as long as she has the talent and potential in this area, she can easily stimulate skills, which can be regarded as a mechanism for cultivating talents. The planting room has also been expanded. At the same time, Enkai has also remade a batch of planting boxes and planted a part of its own seeds, which not only made up for the previous loss, but also directly expanded the scale of planting. After all, there are more people, and I am afraid I can't go out to search for food in the future. There are more varieties, and there is always no problem. Soon Kent and others returned. They brought back a few sheep and a few pigs, as well as 2 wild animals, all of which were relatively healthy and uninfected. For this reason, Enkai has set up 2 breeding rooms and completed supporting facilities. It has spent a lot of materials and energy to finally supplement the meat supply. Other functional rooms, such as medical rooms, recreation rooms, washrooms, etc., were all built by Enkai in the next few days. He stays at home all day, perfecting the configuration of the shelter as much as possible. With his efforts and the help of others, the shelter changes every day, gradually becoming complete and fulfilling. And just as Enkai inferred from the beginning, no one came to disturb them anymore these days, including the group of people in the Science and Technology Union building, who were regarded as enemies at the beginning, did not show up. A few days passed in a flash, and finally, it was the day of the nuclear explosion announced on the radio. These days, Enkai has been paying attention to broadcasting. He also set up a broadcasting room specially. There is a thicker and longer antenna on the top of the mountain, and the signal strength is better than before. Just after waking up this morning, the radio sounded again, and the speaker was still the president of the federal government. On the radio, he expressed regretfully that nuclear explosions could no longer be changed. Zombie mutations in the city accelerated, more zombies became faster and stronger, and the federal army suffered serious losses. Today, everyone in the shelter had heavy expressions after hearing the news. Can you determine the method of nuclear strike? Enkai looked at Philip and Kent. In this regard, Kent still has a more say in theory. If nothing happens, the government should use rockets as a carrier for nuclear warheads. In fact, Enkai also learned about the military development and technological development of the Union like Kent and Philip. In terms of science and technology, the world is not much different from the Earth. There is no obvious technological gap, at most it is only 10 years behind the Earth. The specific performance is that mobile phones are not so smart and the internet is not so developed. Of course, these things are actually meaningless nowadays. Whether it is mobile phone signal transfer or the operation of internet servers, in fact, it is inseparable from human operations. If no one is operating, there may be no problem for a period of time, but as time goes by, related equipment will be shut down for various reasons. So except for walkie-talkies, other remote communication methods under modern technology have almost all failed. Even broadcasting, to put it bluntly, can be delivered here from the federal capital. To be honest, it is already a very remarkable thing. Therefore, in the absence of signal support, whether it is a mobile phone network or a computer internet network, it has now been suspended. In addition to these 2 points, the difference between the two worlds in daily life technology is even smaller. In terms of military affairs, the military development of this world is actually similar to that of previous lives. What is the biggest difference? That is probably the aerospace aspect. In this respect, the rocket realm of this world is obviously stronger than that of the Earth. This world has successfully sent flames into space many years ago, and launched satellites in low Earth orbit, so the satellite communication system is still usable. However, along with it, the development of the aircraft industry is relatively lagging behind. The most advanced fighter aircraft in the world is almost equivalent to the third-generation fighter aircraft on Earth. The performance is good, but the operation of radar and avionics system is more complicated. In fact, this kind of development progress is rather strange. Industry, especially the military industry, often affects the whole body. In many cases, it is not about how fast you want to develop or how far you want to develop, you can definitely achieve it. Without a strong enough industrial system, without enough accumulation of technology behind it, it is almost impossible to develop to a very high-end level in a certain realm. This is the case on Earth, and the world can be different without reason. However, the development of rockets here is relatively rapid, but the development of aircraft is relatively backward, which is very strange. Could it be that they don't pay attention to aerospace? That's impossible. But if you pay attention, why the plane has become an obvious shortcoming. And Kai doesn't know, and of course he is not interested in learning about these things. Anyway, nuclear strikes will be launched all over the world. Human civilization will inevitably go backwards at that time. Even the federal government and other governments will be organized and targeted. All important data are backed up. Human beings want to re-rule the world and redeveloping to the pre-Doomsday situation, and I don't know how many years it will take. It is estimated that he will never see this scene in his life, so he just learned about the development of the scientific realm, but did not go into it. The time of the nuclear explosion is set at 10 o'clock in the morning. Of course, the time of the explosion in different places is also uncertain. With the current state of the federal government, it is impossible to synchronize across the country. So after the broadcast stopped, Ankai and the others ate breakfast first, and then everyone simply finished their work and took the elevator together to the observation deck on the top of the mountain. The tense construction of shelters has come to an end temporarily. Today is a relatively memorable day. Even if the work at hand has not actually been completed, and Kai has all stopped. He is going to take everyone with him and take a last look at the existence of human civilization. Because in the near future, this city will probably cease to exist, and if it exists several times, it will probably become a real ruin instead of what it is now, and it will generally maintain the appearance of the city as it should be. And this observation deck was specially built by him for 3 hours yesterday afternoon. It was passed through the elevator. There were several protective doors throughout the whole journey, and the top one was used as an observation deck, and its defensive ability was also very strong. The glass is specially strengthened by the system, and the wall is specially thickened, and it is divided into 2 spaces, showing the appearance of a big circle and a small circle. Needless to say, the big circle outside is the place of the observation room. The small circle inside is a space for washing and disinfecting the body. It will also be used here in the future. Standing on the edge of the observation deck, you can just see the surrounding ground conditions, including the main entrance of the shelter and the air above the main entrance. The purifier can be seen clearly. Once someone in the distance approaches this side, before the camera in front of the main entrance finds the other person, the person in the observation deck can notice the other person 1 step in advance. Therefore, it is naturally necessary to build such an observation deck. What's more, will Enkai take the initiative to admit that he is actually mainly for watching the scenery? Do not make jokes. As time passed, everyone was chatting and gossiping, but the atmosphere in the observation deck became heavier. As an outsider, Enkai really doesn't feel too obvious whether this world is destroyed. After all, there was nothing he was familiar with. Although most things looked the same, the paradoxical feeling had always been quite obvious. It is because he knows more people and friends, and he has more first-stage relationship with Mary, which allows him to gradually integrate into the world better. But at the root, he still has a little alienation from this world. If it was the Earth that caused the nuclear explosion, and if the city that he had been in for more than 10 years from birth to growth was about to be destroyed, his mood would definitely be much sadder than it is now. So he doesn't feel too much. But other people are different. It's Carter and Carol several times. Although they are from other cities, the land, this federation, and the world under their feet are their homes. The more you slip, the farther and farther you are, and you won't be in a good mood for who you are. Even the three most lively little guys are exceptionally silent today. When Enkai wants to find some words to invigorate the atmosphere. Coming, Philip said in a deep voice. Everyone immediately closed their mouths, followed his gaze, and saw that a dark dot appeared in the distant sky at some point. This small spot gradually grew larger, and there was a regular wake behind it. Enkai and the others just watching the rocket gradually get bigger and bigger, and when they were about to approach the city, they began to gradually change their direction. Enkai lightly pressed on the operating table, and the original transparent glass was immediately covered with a layer of black, which was used to protect the eyes. When nuclear weapons explode, they will produce strong light radiation. If they are directly viewed with the naked eye without any protection, they will definitely cause serious damage to the eyes. Therefore, Enkai has devoted a little more effort to the windows around the observation deck. Above, I got a protective film. This protective film was also made through the system, and he didn't understand the specific principles. Finally, dragging a long wake, carrying the most lethal nuclear weapons in the history of human civilization, the rocket slowly landed. Boom, nuclear explosion, here comes. How to describe the scene of a nuclear explosion? Enkai couldn't describe it, because at the moment the nuclear warhead exploded, he couldn't see anything. The light produced by the nuclear explosion blocked all his sight at that moment. Even if there was a protective film on the surrounding glass, he could not help closing his eyes. Fortunately, he was different from everyone else. He had the help of the system. The next second he opened his eyes again, and then he saw a scene he would never forget. The Earth is like lake water, and the nuclear explosion is like dropping a stone in the calm lake water, and the water surface immediately caused ripples. The original sturdy building, like foam on the water, burst quickly. The Earth rolled up and down, like countless Earth dragons walking underneath. The shock wave of terror, with the explosion point as the core, destroys everything where it passes, and nothing can stop the shock of this terror. But the shock wave is only one of the injuries caused by the nuclear explosion. Intense light radiation and penetrating nuclear radiation make exposed people within several kilometers and within the direct site of the bombing site immediately die. The reflection effect of the colorful mirror glass wall makes people hiding behind the building exposed to light radiation, and countless buildings the fire started to burn under the high temperature. The ensuing shock waves turned all the glass curtain walls into countless glass shotguns sweeping the streets and alleys, and millions of cars full of gasoline flew to several blocks with flames to spread the fire. The fire caused by a nuclear explosion and the collapse of a skyscraper may cause more casualties than the nuclear explosion itself. In addition to nuclear weapons, there is a kind of terrorist kill: radioactive contamination. After everything is over, it will be entangled for several years. Its kill range depends to a large extent on meteorological factors such as wind and wind direction, and it also depends on extinction. The efficiency of washing operations and medical rescue work. However, it is a pity that the fundamental reason why this world will usher in a nuclear explosion is that the threat of upgraded zombies is in ascension. The Federal Army has no way to deal with this, so it has to use this method to leave the last fire for mankind. In the nuclear explosion, the old city was razed to the ground almost instantly, and the shock wave spread rapidly against the ground, and soon reached the river bank area. The metal bridge shook wildly, the river water was evaporated, and the buildings in the riverside area also suffered a devastating blow. But 10 seconds later, the shock wave arrived near the shelter. Wherever he went, the earth was turned up, mud and sand were flying all over the sky, and trees were uprooted and set ablaze. Fortunately, the power of the shock wave has been greatly reduced at this time. It rapped stones and hit the walls and glass of the observation deck, turning out a fierce impact. Fortunately, the defensive power of the shelter was strong enough, and it was not broken by the shock wave, and the heavy concrete walls and special tempered glass also blocked the radiation from the outside. At this time, everyone had opened their eyes, and they were shocked by the terrifying scene before them. Like in Kai, they have not really seen the appearance of nuclear weapons when they exploded. Just like the Earth, nuclear weapons have appeared in this world. It is the most terrifying weapon of war. It is also the sword of Damocles hanging over human beings, prompting human beings in this world to stop disputes and use guns. Resolving conflicts with bullets has become sitting at the negotiating table to deal with disputes. Therefore, people in this world, especially those who are still alive, have basically seen the power of nuclear weapons exploding on television and various media. To say that they have seen it with their own eyes, this is definitely the first and only time. Everyone was silent, no matter what they thought about nuclear explosions before, but at this moment, after seeing the terrifying power of nuclear explosions, everyone was terrified from the heart. This is a weapon made by mankind, but it is not a power that mankind should master. The mushroom cloud rising not far away is enough to leave an unforgettable memory in the hearts of everyone who has seen it. Well, everyone, let's go down. After a few minutes, the earth has returned to calm, and Kai clapped his hands and said to everyone around him. Everyone didn't speak, but followed him silently, and took the elevator back to the shelter below. And Kai led everyone back to the living room, which has been transformed into a round room, surrounded by a circle of sofas, a large round table in the middle, and a dozen small stools next to the table. Everyone finds their own location. Sitting down, and Kai walked to the table, reached out and pressed on the table, a map dropped from the roof. This is a federal map full of red dots. Every red dot in it represents a nuclear explosion point, and all cities above the designated size are included. According to data released by the Federation in the early years, the government had 1,100 nuclear warheads when it was at its most hands, each of which can easily destroy a city and kill hundreds of thousands of people instantly. And the total number of buildings in the Federation that can be called a city is only in the early 700s, so almost every city can be assigned a nuclear warhead, and even some large cities can be assigned to 2 or 3. In other words, this wave is a full-scale attack, and perhaps only small counties or small towns can survive the disaster. As long as it is a city, there is basically no possibility of avoiding this attack. 733 cities can produce at least 7 million tons of radioactive dust. This is only the smallest number. This number may reach 1,000, 1,200 or even more. So it is foreseeable that for a long time in the future, the outside world will be a dead place, so starting today, we will suspend going out. All life activities must be carried out in the shelter. This is a commonplace topic. Before that, after the last broadcast of the federal government, everyone had expected this day. So next, we have to allocate the work well. This time the crisis requires all of us to work together to face it. And Kai said with a serious expression, and everyone looked at him seriously. But then he laughed out loud. Of course, you don't have to be too nervous. We are well prepared. As long as we don't make mistakes, it's not difficult to survive. This is also due to Nkai's system. To be honest, it is actually the easiest for him to live alone. The more people there are, the more difficult it may be. But then again, if the humans before the nuclear explosion can still retain a certain bottom line, then the humans after the nuclear explosion will definitely break through the final bottom line and become a complete beast. Before the nuclear explosion, although the zombies were raging, the zombies themselves did not destroy food and drinking water. The water and electricity were cut off, but because of the zombie crisis, the living people could no longer take care of production, so the electricity and drinking water were forced to be interrupted. But with the occurrence of nuclear explosions, all the cities where humans lived before have been turned into rubble, and radioactive dust will be everywhere. Even if the food outside has not been destroyed, it has already been polluted. In this case, any clean food and drinking water will become 100 times more precious than gold. At this time, if Enkai only relies on himself, no matter how good his life is, it doesn't make sense. Because in that case, he is destined to not be able to contact anyone, otherwise what awaits him is definitely betrayal and sneak attack. So he needs companions. What's more, it's really meaningless to live alone. If it takes too long, he can drive himself crazy, and a companion who can talk and interact is also very necessary. Although this will make Ascension difficult to survive, he is willing to bear the price. From today, the shelter will be divided into two parts, the combat team and the production team. These two parts will not interfere with each other. The captain of the combat team will be Philip, and Kent will be the deputy captain. Curry, Mary, George, and Liao, the four of you are team members. Divide into two groups. If you don't have a mission, you will take turns to guard the sanctuary. The rest team can't be idle. Make good use of the shooting range and training room. Those who can't go down, so you must ensure your own combat effectiveness. The production team is responsible for production and all logistics-related work. Carter is the captain and Joanna as the deputy captain. Your respective tasks are in accordance with my previous arrangements. Kent is in charge of the generator set, Emma is in charge of the restaurant, Joanna is in charge of the plantation, Carol is in charge of the teacher work, and Haley and Alex are free men. Where do you need to go? Of course, your daily studies can't fall behind. This is true for everyone, and the same is true for the combat team. Everyone in the skill training room has to go to the skill training room at least twice a week, each time at least 2 hours. You must enrich your own skills as soon as possible, because the shelter needs your strength. Quote. Enkai is the commander and architect. This is tacit, and this question does not need to be questioned. So he can do specific work or do nothing. Of course, he will not do nothing. The shelter does not support idlers, and he is unwilling to be an idler. It's just that he deliberately doesn't arrange specific tasks for himself. After all, he has to be responsible for everything. A single job is destined to distract him. And the jobs he arranges are basically determined based on everyone's skills. If you have skills, you will get a certain bonus when engaged in related work, which is very important. Regarding his arrangement, no one disagreed. Not to mention their loyalty, just to say that they are now under the protection of Enkai, and it is impossible to oppose his opinion. The current shelters have almost completed various basic functions. Among them, the most important things such as water, electricity, oxygen, food, medicine, etc., are currently enough for them to use. But the problem is not without it. This will need to be solved slowly in the future. After all, too little time was left for him before, and it is impossible for him to solve all the problems in every aspect. Not to mention other things, the oxygen system alone, although it has broken through once, is still not enough. The amount of oxygen produced is sufficient, but the speed of oxygen production and the durability of the equipment are also a problem. After that, it will continue to be upgraded, and the material will also become a problem by then. This is just oxygen supply equipment. There are also various problems with other equipment. In short, the nuclear explosion has occurred and the shelter has just started on the road. There is a long way to go. Enkai and everyone else need to continue their efforts. The power of nuclear strikes covering all major cities in the world is very terrifying. In just a few days, the sky of this world was completely covered by a thick radiant cloud, and there was no sign of dissipating. The outside has become pitch black, the sun has been completely blocked, and the temperature of the air is slowly decreasing. Before the nuclear explosion, the temperature during the day was almost 10 degrees Celsius, and at night it was almost 2 degrees below zero. It has only been less than a week since the outside temperature has dropped to about 0 degrees, and the temperature difference between day and night has become very small, and this trend of temperature decline will continue. It is expected that the outside temperature will drop to -10 degrees. Only left and right can stabilize, and then there will be a long freezing period. When the radiation clouds in the sky dissipate and the sun shines on the earth again, the temperature can be restored. The division of labor has also begun in the shelter. The two protection teams took turns to protect, but the personnel reconfigured. Mary and Leo were removed. The reason is simple, because Enkai suddenly noticed that they didn't seem to be so nervous. In the world after the nuclear explosion, there are still people outside who dare to move, but this number is hard to say, 10. 100. Not to mention whether they can find here. Even if they can find it, I am afraid it will be difficult to break through the external defense measures. Therefore, on the defensive passage, a maximum of 2 persons in each group is enough. So the current arrangement is that Kent and Philip are the captains and vice-captains, each with 1 team member. Kent goes with Curry, and Philip goes with George. Mary and Leo, who were torn off, were also assigned new jobs. Mary makes medicines. The so-called medicines are not just used to treat diseases. Enkai only needs to put enough materials in the chemistry station and set the formula, and Mary will make it. She has the skills in this area, can ascension efficiency and reduce consumption. Leo has a breeding skill. Although the level is very low, it was obtained entirely because he liked to keep pets before, but when no one else has this skill, it is undoubtedly the best choice for him to take charge of the breeding house. Of course, as an animal lover, not the kind that you need to have for meals, Leo is a suitable person for breeding skills, so as long as he learns more, he can have stronger skills in the future. The importance is still quite high. For this arrangement, Leo is obviously very happy. Although there is still no expression on his face, don't get me wrong, he just has a deeper personality, not a 3-no player like Mary. In fact, Leo had been assigned to the protection team before, but to put it bluntly, this arrangement was also because Enkai did not have more manpower available. He has been very disappointed with Carter. This man is a middle-aged man, but he is really very courageous. When he brought his family across the wilderness and came to this city before, he showed courage. But as he joined the sanctuary, that courage dissipated in an instant. To be honest, he is far inferior to Leo when it comes to fighting talent. Not to mention other people. For the shelter at this time, Leo is absolutely indispensable if you want to form a 6-person protection team regardless of Enkai. However, when Enkai determined that the protection team could be less than 2 people, he immediately transferred Leo out. He asked Leo to go to the breeding house, on the one hand because Leo's skills are useful, on the other hand, he also took into account Leo's self-esteem. Yes, the second is the main reason. In fact, it doesn't matter even if you don't have skills, it's nothing more than a smaller meat output, and as long as you use more study rooms, it's not difficult to train a talented person in breeding. But for Leo, who has lost an arm, most of his work is no longer suitable for him. If he is a 70-year-old man, no, even if he is a 50-year-old person, the life of old age care is not unacceptable. But he is only in his early 20s this year. If he was allowed to take care of him early now, the shelter would be able to afford it, and he himself probably couldn't stand it. So you need to find him a suitable job. But to tell the truth, the protection team is not suitable for him. Let him stay, he himself feels uncomfortable. After all, he knows his own family affairs. Doesn't Leo realize that this is Enkai deliberately taking care of him? This choice may only be slightly better than letting him retire now. But if he was asked to engage in breeding, it would be different. He likes to keep pets. He has some experience in this respect. Moreover, there are various equipments in the breeding house. To help give birth, Leo only needs to rely on his own experience to adjust the parameters on the device when it needs to be adjusted. For him, this is a completely competent job, and when he does it, the effect will be better than others. In other words, this job is actually tailor-made for him. Even if he loses an arm, if he does this job, there is no element of charity or compassion in it. So this is a kind of respect for Leo. So after getting this job, Leo was very happy and burst out with great enthusiasm. He stayed in the breeding house all day, almost sleeping with the animals. "Anne, we are almost running out of food. Enkai's main job is to continuously enrich the shelter. This substantial work involves not only manufacturing rooms, but also manufacturing equipment, manufacturing various necessities, and manufacturing various materials. Materials also need to be manufactured. Metals, plastics, synthetic rubbers, various chemicals. Most of these things cannot be faked by human hands. He still has to do it himself. However, just a few days later, Mary found him. In the first sentence, a very important question was raised. Not enough food. And Kai froze for a moment. It is reasonable to say that there is still a lot of food in the shelter. There is no reason that food shortages began to appear so soon. In fact, it's not enough. Mary said blankly, if we follow the current consumption rate, at most 1 month, our food will be eaten, and then. Mary didn't say the rest, but the meaning was clear. And Kai frowned. Could his previous estimation be wrong? So he followed Mary to the warehouse, checked the grain reserves, and found that it was not enough. The food grown by the shelter itself will take more than a month to mature, which is already very fast. Planting various vegetables, fruits or grains in the planting box itself does not have much speed bonus. Of course, the previous bonus is not small, but as the planting box is moved indoors, even if there are sunlights, the growth rate of plants has dropped a lot. Although it is much faster than the actual farming speed of farmers, it is still a bit slower than the planting box outside the planting box, and it is such a little time difference, which leads to if the food in the shelter is lost, it is likely that there is not enough food. The time difference is a problem that Ankai did not anticipate before. After putting down the planting box in the shelter of the pharmaceutical factory before, he had already observed the maturity time of the plants and thought he was prepared. As a result, I did not expect that the impact would be so obvious depending on the placement environment. In nature, plants grow the fastest, and with the support of planting boxes, they can go from germination to maturity in less than a month, which is very exaggerated. Indoors, the speed will be slightly reduced and can reach the level of about a month. And if it is in the underground space, the speed will further slow down, and then reach the level of more than a month. Of course, if you use fertilizer or other means to speed up, it can still be reduced to less than a month, but this method is also applicable under the first two scenarios. In addition, the growth time of different plants is also different. Among them, plants such as potatoes, carrots, and lettuce grow the fastest. Grain, corn, and pumpkins came in second place. The growth rate of herbs is the slowest. Even in the planting box, it takes a minimum of 3 months to mature. As for how long these things will take in reality, Ankai is not clear, but in the case of the system, they all have their own growth time, and the length is variable. But in general, by using the system planting box, the maturation time of the plants can be greatly reduced, ensuring that Ankai does not actually have to face too much food pressure. This time, it was purely his mistake. He didn't pay more attention to the planting box. He just put down the planting box, planted the seeds, and got busy with his own affairs. If Emma hadn't discovered this problem first and told Mary, and Mary had relayed own words, then I am afraid that the shelter would really have a huge food crisis soon. In fact, for now, food is already in crisis. If they want to persist until the crops are mature, they will have to cut down on food and clothing for some time in the future. In fact, it really doesn't matter. Compared to other survivors in other places who often kill for a piece of bread, the members of Ankai Sanctuary have never really been hungry. That is, Ankai just went through the few days and got hungry a little bit. After that, he searched for the ability Ascension, and it became much easier to find food. Although he has just officially started planting now, as long as he takes care of him, the future is quite promising. In other words, the people who follow him, not to mention, only eat, as long as they join the shelter, they will almost no restrictions. Compared to the survivors outside, it is simply not too happy. So everyone is hungry occasionally, but the problem is really not that big. After all, according to different life conditions, people's ability to resist hunger is also completely different. Not to mention anything else, just talk about Ankai's journey through the world before. In his parents' generation, why are people especially able to eat? I often hear that someone eats more than a dozen steamed buns in one meal. In the eyes of later young people, it is almost like a joke. Eat more than a dozen steamed buns in one meal. Is it Wang Zishao steamed bun? If the steamed bun is normal, won't it be crushed to death? Facts have proved that it really won't be crushed. And the reason why people in the past can eat so much, in the final analysis, is that there is no oil and water in their stomachs. Because of the lack of materials in that special age, most ordinary people lack protein and fat in their bodies, and their ability to resist hunger is relatively poor, and the body needs more food for each meal. The young people in modern life are rich in all kinds of materials. They can eat whatever they want. Unless they are picky eaters, their bodies will not be greatly lacking in certain nutrients, and their ability to resist hunger is relatively high. Strong, to be honest, skipping 1 or 2 meals is really not a big deal. Of course, this refers to healthy people. Some diseases still have food requirements. If you eat less, things may happen, such as low blood sugar. Pulled away. Let's talk about the people in the shelter. Although their diet is not healthy, they are really happy compared to the survivors outside, and their anti-hunger ability is much stronger. If you don't eat 1 or 2 meals, it's really not a big problem. What's more, in the current situation, it is not really necessary for everyone to be hungry. In fact, as long as you eat a small amount of each meal, you can almost stick to the first harvest. There is no other way. The environment outside is really not suitable for going out. There are countless radioactive dust floating in the air, the temperature is 10 to 20 degrees below zero, and the outside is pitch black without any light. Under this circumstance, let him go to the city to search for supplies. Isn't that what is difficult for a strong man? I didn't look for death like that. Therefore, after Enkai inspected the planting house, he had no choice but to reduce the food supply. The price of doing so was that the trainer that was going to go could only be deactivated for the time being. If you can't eat enough, you naturally have no energy to train, so all those who are idle are rushed to the study room by Enkai and begin to learn skills. The equipment used in the study room is similar to the virtual reality equipment mentioned in many online game novels. It is to wear a helmet, and then immerse yourself in it. Through the time change of the virtual world, to extend the learning time, an ascension skill proficiency, to achieve the purpose of learning skills or upgrading existing skills. However, this thing is too black in technology, so the learning process is actually distorted by the system's use of cognitive blur. This is not to modify memory. All people who have used this kind of machine are very clear about what they are doing, but after the cognition is distorted, they won't feel that this thing is so incredible. The memory is still that memory, but the degree of importance will plummet, and the feeling will be as normal as breathing. In addition, other work in the shelter must continue. In addition, the problem of food shortages is actually related to the animals raised in the shelter, and the food intake of these guys is not small. In fact, before the arrival of nuclear winter, Enkai had asked several children to collect fodder outside every day. It is mainly based on a variety of weeds, but at the same time some vegetables and food should be matched. Otherwise, the animals will not be raised well, and they will naturally not meet his needs for a balanced diet in the shelter. Therefore, part of the food rations of these people must be taken to feed the animals in the shelter, which also intensifies the consumption of food on the other hand. However, people can be hungry, but animals cannot. Therefore, what Enkai can do is to take the lead in demonstrating and actively reduce its own quota. Others also reduced, but excluding the 3 little guys, the rations of the 3 little guys Alice, Haley and Alex must be satisfied. After all, the children are still growing their bodies and need more nutrition. And kids, how much can they eat even if they can? After all, there is no real big stomach king. As long as everyone persists in overcoming the difficulties during this period, I believe it will be easy to survive. Call. Enkai returned to the living room, and she collapsed on the sofa. In recent days, he has been busy supplementing the various facilities necessary for the shelter. Although he has not arranged any specific work for himself, he is busier than anyone else. After a few days, the preliminary work has finally been completed, and he can finally take a break. Of course, the cost is also very high. The various materials he had accumulated before are now almost used, including the materials automatically discharged by the system when he built the room, and he has used it as much as possible. Now if you enter the warehouse again, the empty rats inside can cry out. I still remember that when the shelter was just established, the materials in it were hard to say. At least a standard room was piled up with various materials. It was full. In the eyes of Enkai at the time, these materials did not say much, and it should not be difficult to help the shelter through the most difficult period in the early period. However, it now appears that this idea of his may be a bit too optimistic. Not to mention the preparatory stage, the materials have been exhausted, not to mention the durability of the current shelter facilities, most of them are not enough, either to be replaced, or upgraded, or even repaired, that also needs to consume various materials. With the current situation, it may not take a week before the shelter will fall into a material crisis. The food crisis has not been resolved, and the material crisis has come again. Thinking about it, it is really a headache. But there is no way. In order to get a better life, these expenditures are necessary, so what Enkai has to do now is to go out to find materials. When I think of the ice and snow outside, there is still radiation dust everywhere, and the temperature is as low as winter night. And Kai felt depressed from the bottom of his heart. Anne, are you all done? Kent came over with 2 cups of coffee and sat down beside Kai. He is now in a state of rotation. He just went to the study room to study. As soon as he returned to the 2nd floor, he saw Kai lying on the sofa and made him a cup of coffee. For coffee, the shelter still has a lot of stock, whether it is instant coffee or coffee beans, there are plenty of them here. After all, this thing cannot be eaten as a meal, and generally speaking, only people who need to be on duty at night need to have a clear mind. Others don't usually drink coffee, so coffee consumption is very slow, and occasionally extravagance is justified. Kent knows what Kai does every day. Although the system distorts their perceptions, it only makes them ignore the unscientific aspects. However, Kai's specific work is clearly communicated to everyone. Nailed it. Kai nodded, but there are not many materials in the shelter. Next, we need to go out to collect materials, otherwise the update and maintenance of the equipment will not be possible later. He then explained the current problems. This is indeed a problem. Ken Feng nodded, then looked at Kai. Actually, you don't need to go out. You are now the core of the shelter. No one knows what is going on outside. You can't let you go out to take risks. In fact, it's fine for me and Curry to go out. You can list the things you need. We collect as much as possible. Kent said seriously. Kai was taken aback when he heard the words, and quickly thought about this possibility. He was used to going out to search for supplies by himself before, so he never thought about the possibility of not going out. Now that Kent had reminded him, he immediately realized that, yes, the own shelter is no longer alone. He has many friends, especially the combat team, and the personnel are actually quite enough. The shelter's own defensive capabilities are already strong enough. As long as there is a group of teams staying in the shelter to guard against possible enemies, the other group can actually be dispatched. Although there may be a slight shortage of personnel, the problem is not big, and Kai and Mary can become the 3rd team at any time. If you think about it this way, this arrangement can really come true. So what they need most now is anti-nuclear clothing. Anti-nuclear clothing is not difficult to do. Kai planned to do it before, but he postponed it a bit because he was not going to go out for the time being. Now that there is a demand for this, it goes without saying. To make nuclear protective clothing, we need to use rubber, plastic, cloth, glass and other materials. I don't know how these things can be made into nuclear protective clothing. According to Kai's understanding, normal nuclear protective clothing should be used. Special materials, can ordinary plastic and rubber really work? But the system said yes, he didn't think about it too much. Although there is a shortage of shelter materials, he can still squeeze out these materials. Soon, 2 sets of anti-nuclear clothing were produced. Correspondingly, the washing and disinfection equipment in the passage area was also installed. These things are actually not complicated. The equipment is the simplest one, which is mainly used. Special liquid medicine, these things can be made at the chemistry station. In addition, Kent and the others need to bring some oxygen cylinders when going out. It can be regarded as an accessory for the system version of the anti-nuclear suit. Regular oxygen products need to use some metals and pressure pumps. These things are not difficult, but the main thing is the problem of materials. Kai exhausted all the last materials in the shelter in one breath before making everything. You are going out this time to collect basic resources, such as wood, food, seeds, etc. The more the better, but you must be careful, because we can't go out to support you, so when you encounter an enemy, you can avoid it. Don't fall in love with war. Nuclear explosions will indeed destroy most of humanity, but there will always be people who can survive, and in this situation, I am afraid that some people have broken the can because of insufficient materials, ignoring the radiation dust from the outside world, and directly ran out to die. This kind of person is the most terrible, because they can't live, so they just die. In contrast, Kent and Curry are wearing anti-nuclear suits, and their mobility must be inferior to these people. When the 2 sides really fight, Kent and them must be at a disadvantage. As long as the anti-nuclear suit is broken, it is equivalent to their failure, and failure is considered death, so it is not an exaggeration to be careful. Relax, we understand. Ken Tong nodded and said nothing, while Curry said with a smile beside him. In addition to anti-nuclear suits, they are also equipped with powerful weapons. A machete for close combat is a must, and a pistol is also a must. In addition, the two of them also brought a spray gun, and Curry equipped it. A submachine gun, Kent is equipped with a rifle, full of bullets and grenades. There is no problem with such firepower in theory, but after all, it should not be careless. Everything was prepared. Philip and George, who were in charge of guarding the gate, retreated to the preparation area. The Kent-Curry team who went out first came to the passage area, and after the isolation door at the back was slowly closed, they opened the door of the shelter. A cold wind swept in the radiant dust, and the temperature in the passage area dropped rapidly. The two turned around and waved to the people behind the isolation door, before they walked out slowly. Of course they would not walk to the river bank area. That would be too stupid. Their goal was the garage not far away. It was made by Enkai before the nuclear explosion. He was planning to connect the garage and the shelter. After all, the straight line distance is only a few tens of meters, but he thought about it and didn't do it for the time being, because once it got through, it meant that a set of protective equipment had to be prepared there, which was tantamount to changing directions and increasing material consumption. The main thing was that there was no plan to go out before, so the vehicle was not used for the time being, so the garage was put aside separately. But in this situation, the connection channel is also on the agenda. Fortunately, cement is still sufficient at present, and the various materials extruded through the manufacture of passages and rooms should also be sufficient to manufacture a complete set of protective equipment. Watching Kent and Curry disappear outside the door of the shelter, Joanna and other female members began to pray for Kent and them. At this time, the outside world is completely dark. The thick clouds block the sunlight. Although it cannot be said that a trace of light cannot be illuminated, it is obviously impossible to capture the clear light with human eyes. If no lighting equipment is used, the line of sight will be limited. Within the range of 5 to 10 meters around the body, no matter how far away, you can't see anything. The ground was not full of dust, sand, and stones. The small woods outside the shelter had quietly disappeared. The first shock wave after the nuclear explosion destroyed all the surrounding woods, and the small trees were blown away directly. The big trees was also broken by the waste. But if you just collect wood, it's actually a lot more convenient. The wood must be collected, but not now. Kent and the others have more important things to do. Opened the garage and drove the Jeep out. Compared with the big truck, the Jeep has better maneuverability and the passability is undoubtedly better. The road has suffered a certain degree of damage before, but the damage at the time was not serious. It was mainly due to the sudden outbreak of a zombie crisis based on the years of disrepair. As a result, a large number of cars were blocked on the road, continuously exploding and burning, leading to further deterioration of the road conditions, coupled with all kinds of garbage on the road, so that before this, the city's road conditions have become worse whether it is inside or outside. The nuclear explosion can be regarded as the last straw to crush the camel, and it will completely destroy the already bad roads. There are ravines and ravines everywhere, and in the most serious places, the height difference can even reach several meters. Kent and Curry drove the car, and even turned on the small searchlight on the roof to illuminate the road ahead, and they didn't have to get out of the car to observe. Kent is responsible for observation and posture, and Curry is responsible for drawing maps to facilitate future travel. But because of this, their forward speed is really a bit slow. In a short distance of more than 10 kilometers, they can't walk for more than an hour, and the closer they are to the river bank, the more difficult it is to walk the road. Be careful, even with searchlights, sometimes it is inevitable that some dangerous places will be missed. At this time, the right front wheel of the Jeep suddenly hangs in the air, and the ground in front of the entire front of the car is constantly sinking. In just a few seconds, there is already a small half of the body. They all went out, and the tires behind them all started to leave the ground. It looked like a normal road before, but who would have thought that the lower part had already collapsed? As soon as the Jeep stepped up, the ground suddenly collapsed, causing the body to become unbalanced, and it was about to fall to the right and forward. Curry reacted very quickly. He threw away the pen and paper in his hand and grabbed the protective pole above the Jeep with both hands. With a violent force, Curry got into the back of the car and slipped away before the body was completely out of balance. Sliding to the left rear of the Jeep, and then the whole person jumped up. With the help of his own weight, he fell heavily. The Jeep that was about to lose balance finally regained its balance, and the left rear wheel landed again. The moment he landed, Kent slammed the accelerator, and the Jeep quickly retreated and escaped from the collapsed place. After returning to a stable place, both of them squeezed a sweat. They got out of the car and came to the collapsed area to look down. The distance below was at least 10 meters. Good fellow, if they accidentally overturned and fell off, not to mention they would die suddenly, but they would definitely be injured. And if you want to climb out at that time, the difficulty is not ordinary. The two were afraid for a while. Fortunately, Kent reacted quickly. The moment the collapse appeared, he immediately stepped on the brakes, and the speed was not fast at that time, so he didn't rush out all the way, otherwise the consequences would be really unthinkable. This place can't go anymore, we have to change direction. Kent looked helpless. They are now acting outside, and the risk factor is very high. If they can, they hope to make a quick decision, find what they need, and return to the shelter. Staying outside for an extra second, the danger is ascension. However, the speed of the car has never been increased, and now it is necessary to make a detour. The time consumed by this back and forth will eventually be counted in the entire time. That's no way. In this situation, it's impossible to make a way. Curry also shook his head. It's not clear what is going on the opposite side. The Jeep is not a toy car. This thing weighs a ton at any time. If one gets the way, if the opposite side collapses for a second time, their situation may be even more dangerous. What's more, it seems that there is no material that can be used to build roads at hand. As a last resort, the two had to return to the car, turn the front of the car, and then drive along the line of the collapse, looking for a place to pass. This landslide was actually caused by the urban pipe network. The vibration caused by the explosion struck the pipeline facilities below, so the road above was also affected. If you want to pass, you can only find the location where the pipeline is not damaged or there is no pipeline at all. They drove out for more than 10 minutes before finding a place to pass. After leaving the mark, they passed through this area and finally returned to the river bank area. The riverside area at this time is really like the underworld. The whole world is gray-brown. Buildings collapsed in large numbers. All the glass was shattered. The exterior walls of the houses that were still standing were covered with traces of impact and traces of fire. There was no one on the street, no zombies, only one corpse was occasionally seen. Although the previous riverside area was also very dilapidated and dangerous, it was still a city on the whole. Now, the main urban area has completely disappeared, and the riverside area is also severely damaged, almost in ruins. Their first stop was the pharmaceutical factory. The underground warehouse of the pharmaceutical factory was sealed up again when they left. There were still some things in it. Although it was not too much, it was more or less useful at this time. And if Curry remembers correctly, there were still some canned beans and canned corn at that time, which were not taken away because they were of little value. If they are raw beans and raw corn, they can be used as seeds when they are brought back. The seeds in the cooked cans have already been cooked. First of all, they must not be used as seeds. Moreover, there was no shortage of food in the shelter at the time, and just a few cans were discarded and discarded. After all, there were more important things to take at that time. Now, even if the value of a few cans is very high, if they are still in place, they must be taken back. I just don't know what's going on at the pharmaceutical factory. On the way to the pharmaceutical factory, Kent and Curry checked the equipment, and after confirming that there was no problem, they parked the car to a ruin more than 200 meters away from the pharmaceutical factory. Among them, the two walked, leaning towards the pharmaceutical factory. At this time, the gate of the pharmaceutical factory was already dilapidated. This is also normal. Let's talk about the system first. In fact, there are always advantages and disadvantages. The system provides Ankai with a more convenient production method. He can produce a lot of things without much effort, and he can even become a relatively comprehensive talent without mastering any skills. And if you use a system to make things, no matter what you make or produce, you can get a great ascension at a speed. Otherwise, if he wants to live in this doomsday world, not to mention the difficulty, he might not survive at all. Go down. But conversely, everything that is made through the system or enhanced through the system, as long as it is approved by the system, has a degree of durability. This durability is actually equivalent to the blood volume of various things. Once the durability returns to zero, no matter how strong and durable the thing should be, it will instantly shatter and disappear. It is like a hammer. Even if it is used 24 hours a day, the hammerhead is difficult to damage. Basically, it will not be completely scrapped if it is not beaten tens of thousands of times. But the durability of the hammer is only 12,000, which is considered particularly high durability in the system. However, every time it is used, it will consume 5 points of durability. A fully durable hammer will be damaged when used at most 2,400 times. The hammer is used to reinforce the building, and the number of times it consumes varies with the degree of reinforcement. Even the lowest level of wood reinforcement requires at least 3 hits, which is the effect of adding all the skills. If the relevant skills are not filled up, this number will become 4 or 5 times, which shows that a hammer is really not used many times in the system. The same is true for such reinforced iron gates. The real big iron door should be very sturdy, but after being reinforced by the system, its durability has become 7,000 points. The durability of this kind of building is not the same as the durability of tools. The real big iron gate, if it really has a strong enough attack, may be able to break open at one time. But for iron gates with durability bars, no matter how strong an attack is, they can only consume 150 durability at a time. Therefore, before the durability bars are exhausted, the iron gate's resistance to beating can be said to be very high. Great, but as long as the durability disappears, this thing will be finished in an instant. Fortunately, as a part of the building, it will not disappear out of thin air like a tool. Before Curry returned, the big iron gate suffered a long time of impact, and its durability was already low. Moreover, as long as this thing is placed here, it will wear out 500 durability every day, and eventually the impact generated by the nuclear explosion and various gravel impacts, so the seemingly solid iron door has completely turned into scrap iron at this time, and it is distorted. It's not like it falling to the ground at will. Of course, if Enkai comes over, this thing can be recycled and reused. Through the system, he can collect scrap metal with an iron pickaxe, just as he once did in an apartment building. But now, Kent and Curry definitely don't have this ability, so they can only walk past the big iron gate, completely ignoring it. Not only the big iron gates, but the walls of the pharmaceutical factory were also badly damaged, including the walls of the workshop. The ground is covered with dust and gravel. What's more, a lot of the dust is radioactive dust. Fortunately, Kent and Curry are wearing anti-nuclear suits. Otherwise, if they walk along the way, their bodies will inevitably be nuclear. Radiation effects. The consequences, everyone knows. The two of them walked into the factory workshop cautiously with guns in their hands. This place is messier than before they left. Apparently there were other people staying here after they left, and it seemed that there was more than one wave of people. This is of course taken for granted. After all, Enkai once used this place as a shelter, and various enhancements have been done very well, even if there is a durability problem, but others don't know. Others only know that Enkai used the terrain here and relied on powerful firepower to eliminate many invading enemies. So those survivors thought it was a good place of refuge, so that after Enkai and his party left, many conflicts broke out in a short period of time. Of course, all those conflicts and the people in the conflicts, I am afraid that they have disappeared now. If it's just a zombies problem, this is a good refuge. Even if it is an upgraded zombies, it is difficult to break this place in a short time. But in the post-nuclear era, this place is worthless, because such a building has almost no ability to withstand nuclear radiation, especially the whole circle of glass drilled into a line on the wall of the workshop. When the impact comes, the glass will be over in an instant, and then the high temperature and shock wave will strike here for the first time. Nuclear radiation and radioactive dust are the second wave, followed by low temperature and severe cold as the third wave. 3 waves of blows, so kill anyone who wants to use this place as a sanctuary. If there may be living people here, I'm afraid there are only underground warehouses. Curry knew the location of the underground warehouse, because he had been here before. Not only did Enkai invited him to the underground warehouse to see it, but he also went to help move things when Mary and the others left. I hope those supplies are still there, Curry said expectantly. Don't hold out too much hope, it's hard to guarantee that it won't be discovered by others. Kent scanned the surroundings, not letting down his vigilance at all, guarding against any possible sneak attacks. The two of them walked all the way to the depths of the workshop. No living people were found along the way, but a few dead people were found, but none of them died of the nuclear explosion. They were killed before the nuclear explosion. It should be caused by the conflict here after you left. Kent also specifically inspected the bodies of these people. Worthless. Then the two came to the vicinity of the underground warehouse. They first lay on the ground, trying to hear if there was any movement below. It's a pity that the ceiling of the underground warehouse is too thick, and the door to the warehouse is also very thick, and they are also wearing protective clothing, so they can't hear any sound except their own breathing. I can only take a risk. Kent stood up and took a grenade from his waist. Curry put away his weapon and stepped forward, picking up the handle of the warehouse door very hard. He looked at Kent, and after seeing Kent's head, he made a violent effort. Papa, papa. Almost the moment the entrance door was opened, gunshots sounded inside. Ah, get out, get out. The people inside screamed. Apparently they had realized what it meant after the door was opened. In fact, if they can, Kent and Curry can open the entrance door and stay here, not letting the people inside close the door. Before long, the people inside will die in the low temperature, but they have no time to waste like this, so when the entrance door opened a gap, Kent had already thrown the grenade in. This is a flash bomb, and in the next second, the dazzling light illuminates the entire warehouse. Curry continued to push the door more open, while Kent came out from the other side, holding the spray, and shot it inside. The screams inside were even more violent. Curry also took off the submachine gun. The small sports car rushed past Kent, rushed into the warehouse in one breath, and began to shoot frantically inside. The submachine gun in Curry's hand spit out a storm of metal and gunpowder. Naturally, it swept across the warehouse like a violent wind, and the three figures fell in trembling. When the last shot ceased, there was no one who could stand across from Curry. Cleaning up, Curry let out a long sigh and turned to Kent. Kent also stepped into the warehouse. This is the place where Ankai used to store supplies, and sure enough, it was discovered. These three people obviously used it to avoid nuclear radiation. It's a pity that Kent and the others need the supplies here, and at least they have to confirm whether there is anything left in this place, so when they opened the warehouse door, there was no possibility of peace between the two parties. They checked the equipment of the three people. They were the most common weapons. According to statistics, they were nothing more than 2 small pistols and 3 daggers. Such weapons could not compete with Curry and the others, but the current situation is no better than before. In order to ensure the safety of the owner, the anti-nuclear suits worn by Curry and them should not be damaged at all, otherwise the consequences would be disastrous. So they had no choice but to kill these 3 people. Check the supplies. Kent looked at the 3 corpses on the ground and spoke for a while. Once he was a hero of the people. I don't know how many people were rescued at the scene of the fire, but now, in order to survive, he has to kill these people. There must be a shock inside, but in order to survive, he has no other choice. The 2 checked the warehouse, and apart from finding some rubbish that was completely useless, they found some food, which was more than what was thrown here before, which was obviously collected by the 3. In fact, even if Kent and Curry didn't kill them, these 3 people wouldn't last long because they didn't have the ability to replenish supplies. Although there was still a lot of food and water, if they wanted to feed the 3 big men, this is something. Obviously it is not enough. And there is no toilet here. Washing and going to the toilet are both a problem. So they will be starved to death or thirst to death, or killed by the external environment. There is no other possibility. After leaving the underground warehouse, Curry sensed Kent's mood and comforted. I see. Ken nodded his head. He is not a pedantic person. Although killing people with food is not something he is willing to do, he knows what is more important, for himself and little brother little sister to live better, and for other companions in the shelter to not be hungry. Stomach, even if what he is doing now violates his beliefs all along, he will never back down or hesitate. In addition to food, there are some materials in the warehouse, and these things are also brought by them. In addition, they also found a pallet truck, which should have been brought by these 3 people. Now it is cheaper for them. Pulling the pallet truck, the two took all the valuables in the warehouse, including the weapons found from the three, and they were all packed and taken away. Before leaving, the two searched the pharmaceutical factory from the inside out, and after making sure that there was nothing left, they pulled the trailer and walked to the next place. Their next goal is another building on this street, a gas station. The distance is a little far away, about a few hundred meters, and the car does not need to be driven. This distance is not worth a waste of gasoline. After the nuclear explosion, the riverbank area was quiet as if someone had pressed the mute button. Curry and Kent flashed flashlights and walked forward with 1 foot and 1 foot, and they soon came to the door of the gas station. The damage of the gas station is worse than that of the pharmaceutical factory. There has obviously been an explosion accident, which can be seen from the wall of the gas station. Is there really gasoline here? Curry looked at the tattered gas station in front of him, with a puzzled expression on his face. It's probably impossible, Kent shook his head. We didn't come for gasoline in the first place. See if there is anything worthwhile. The two did not directly enter the small supermarket at the gas station, but came to the backyard, where the tanker truck was parked, and a small warehouse. But the door of the small warehouse is wide open. It is estimated that it has been patronized a long time ago. I don't know how many times. And the main explosion site of the gas station is here. Most of the ground in the backyard was lifted up by the explosion, leaving only a large pit in place. And Kai had been to this place before. To say that the materials were available at the time, but they were too few, he didn't like it at all, so he didn't bother to collect them. But for Kent and Curry, it really is that the grasshopper legs are all meat, and they definitely can't let this place go. Put the pallet truck in the warehouse. The warehouse is empty and the mice have to wipe their tears when they come in. There is basically nothing in the yard, the most is all kinds of garbage. Entering the house in the middle, the general gas station house is mainly used as a convenience store or a small supermarket. The glass in this place is all broken, and the door is wide open. I have been searched for how many times. Do you think there is really anything valuable in this place? Curry asked with a frown. Whether it has value depends on what you think. Do you say this thing has value? Kent bent down to pick up an object. Curry saw it was a toothbrush. Toothbrush. The value is not high, this thing can't be used anymore. It is said to be a toothbrush, but in fact it is seriously deformed, and almost all the bristles are gone, leaving only a handle. This thing is plastic. If you take it back, and should be able to use it. Now our shelter lacks everything, as well as plastic. As Kent said, he hung the toothbrush handle around his waist. Well, you have the final say. Curry shrugged. His character is a bit carefree, definitely not better than Kent, at least when he saw the toothbrush handle, he didn't use it as a material for the first time, and he never thought about the use of such a plastic handle. But Kent said so, and it makes sense to think about it. Look carefully. Now no matter what materials are useful, even garbage, as long as they can be used twice, we will take them away. As Kent said, his expression was a little helpless. No way, the power of a nuclear explosion is too terrifying. Except for the stones and bricks that are still intact, everything else is seriously damaged, and they are no longer qualified to pick and choose. The two quickly ran through the convenience store at the gas station, not to mention, they really found a lot of things. An abandoned toothbrush, a damaged flashlight, some lucky plastic bags that have not been burned by high temperature, a broken radio, a broken mobile phone, a broken microwave oven, a few broken cans, and some other things of lower value. If these things are placed before the nuclear explosion, let alone Ankai, even Kent would not bother to take a look. But now, these things are all loaded into the car by them. No matter whether it is useful or not, it is better to take it back first, maybe it will be useful. In addition to these things, they eventually found some copper wires and a small amount of bad food in the basement of the convenience store. It's not like broken cans, but simply past the expiration date. Of course, after the expiration date does not mean that the food must have been spoiled. The existence of the expiration date only indicates that there will be no problems with the taste and flavor of the food during this period of time. In addition to the expiration date, these aspects will change, but not you can't eat it directly. In this environment, it is definitely unrealistic to unpack and inspect them one by one, so as long as the packaging is intact, no matter whether it is broken or not, take it all back. In addition, they found some tools in the warehouse and took them with them. In general, the harvest is really not that much, and there is not such a degree that a trailer is not covered. After leaving the gas station, Kent and Curry started walking back. On the way back, they noticed a restaurant and didn't know if there was anything in it. But whether you have it or not, you have to take a look. There is also an apartment building that looks relatively complete. This one also needs to be checked. Since it is out, not to mention the full load, at least it should be worth the last time. The oil, otherwise it will be too detrimental. Chapter 91. Inside the shelter, Ankai began to make a channel connecting the garage and the shelter itself. He had enough cement. Philip helped him find a lot of cement before, and he also got a lot of various materials by building the room. Most of them have been used to make various equipment, but some sand and lime are left behind and can be used to make cement. For the melting pot, they have been transferred to the shelter by Ankai and placed in a specially opened workshop. Several furnaces are arranged in a row, which was not enough before, but now, it feels that there are a lot more, and there is no need to use so many. But if Ankai was to dismantle it, he would not bear it. After all, if it was dismantled, he could only return part of the materials, and the remaining part would be wasted. The durability of equipment such as the furnace is very low. According to Ankai's idea, how can he use the furnace until it is about to be destroyed before dismantling it, so as to ensure the maximum benefit? Drink water. Ankai wiped her sweat, and when she was about to rest, Mary found him with a glass of water. Thanks. Ankai ended up drinking a cup and subconsciously thanked him. Need not. Mary's voice is still very cold, and she can hardly feel any emotional fluctuations in her tone. Ankai looked at her a few more times, feeling a little depressed. Before Mary, the iceberg had begun to thaw before him, especially on the night when the shelter was just opened. The relationship between the two had a breakthrough. At first, Ankai thought this was a good start, but after Mary returned to the riverbank the next day, the shelter was attacked shortly afterwards. Mary herself was seriously injured, plus the Kent brothers and sisters joined, and the number of people in the shelter suddenly it increased a lot, but other aspects were not mentioned. But as far as Mary was concerned, she suddenly returned to her original cold state for some reason, opened her heart a little, and closed herself again. This is very depressing. To say that Ankaishi does not like Mary, this must be liked. It is not because the two have a relationship, nor is it all because Mary is beautiful, mainly because the various performances of the little girl since following her have made him a little like F-ked with this girl. I thought I could strike while the iron was hot and let the other party reopen their hearts. As a result, all the previous efforts were in vain. Mary, come here. Ankai thought for a while and decided what to do. He stretched out his hand to greet Mary, and patted a piece of cement next to him. Mary walked over without any expression and sat down beside him. As soon as he sat down, Ankai suddenly hugged her, and then kissed her lips. Mary's lips were soft and slightly cold, making her kiss a little comfortable. Suddenly attacked by Ankai, Mary's eyes widened slightly, and she looked at him in disbelief, but immediately afterwards, she lowered her eyes slightly, did not resist or refuse, instead began to respond to Ankai. A few minutes later, Ankai let go of the opponent. With a slight arm force, he hugged the opponent into his arms. Mary still did not resist, and she leaned in his arms. Mary, although I don't know what you have experienced before, but please trust me, I will protect you. The shelter was attacked before, which I did not expect. I expected that the shelter would be attacked. I just didn't expect it to be so fast. Don't worry, this kind of thing will never happen again in the future. Starting today, I will never let you suffer any harm, I swear. Ankai lightly sniffed the fragrance between each other's hair and said softly. He could feel that Mary's body had been a bit stiff the moment he was hugged by him, but after he had said these words, Mary's body relaxed and hugged her in her arms, feeling soft. Mary was silent and did not speak. Ankai didn't urge him, but just hugged her and gave her a warm embrace. For a while, he thought that Mary was not going to respond to him, and then suddenly he heard a very slight voice. I see. Faint, but it is no longer in that cold state, but with some emotions. To be honest, Ankai is not a master or expert in psychology, and he can't distinguish the emotions in such a slight tone. But anyway, this change is good. This gave Ankai a sigh of relief. He is not afraid of anything else, just that Mary did not respond. As long as there is a response, it means that this change is positive and is developing in a good direction. To be honest, in such a situation as Mary, it is almost impossible to talk to her, because she will not give any clear reply. It is really very difficult to communicate through words. Therefore, Kai can only use this method to knock on Mary's heart a little bit, and he also admitted that he was a little outsited Mary during this period. After all, there are more people in the shelter, and the workload is also increasing. There were a lot of things to take care of, and as a result, communication became less and it became what it is now. Fortunately, he reacted in time, and forced Mary some shocks, so that she finally recovered to her previous condition and was no longer so cold. The two of them sat silently in the passage for about 10 minutes before Mary got up. She also has work to do, it is impossible to be idle here all the time. As the shelter is bigger and there are more people, daily work is not easy. For example, for the most basic cleaning, it is very difficult for only 1 or 2 people to want to do all the cleaning every day, so as long as other people do not have a job at hand, they can do whatever they can. This is already everyone's default thing. And Kai does not need to do this, he is the leader of the shelter, and his current job is also very important. After half a day, he finally hit the passage near the garage, and he only needed to make another room to get it through, but at this time Kai stopped. The garage did not have any cleaning equipment before. Kent and Curry opened the door once, so the garage already has some hidden dangers. Therefore, before completely opening up the channel, Kai first made an isolation door, and connected the pipes that transport the liquid medicine and clean water, as well as the electrical circuit. In addition, the sewer pipes were also laid out. All the wastewater after being washed was collected by him into a huge container similar to a biogas converter. The container was connected to a pump to discharge the wastewater directly onto the surface. It is impossible to discharge into the ground. He is also worried that the groundwater will be polluted. Although the water purifier can purify the water body and purify the radioactive substances in it, the cleaner the water, when it passes through the purifier, it will damage the purifier. The slower the speed. In other words, if he sends completely clean water into the water purifier to purify it, it may hardly consume the durability of the water purifier except for some electricity. But if he pours a scoop of manure water in, although it can also carry out a very thorough purification, the durability loss of the water purifier will be relatively high. The same is true for water contaminated by nuclear radiation. In short, the more difficult it is to purify, the greater the purification range, the faster the durability of the water purifier will drop. So the best way to deal with it is to drain it directly to the surface and keep it away from groundwater. As for whether this will pollute nature, please, is there any place that has not been polluted in nature today? The mountains and plains outside are full of radioactive dust. The cleanliness of the wastewater after washing is much cleaner than the overall environment outside. After putting all the systems in place, Kai went back to get the materials and made a nuclear-proof suit. Of course, some of the materials are definitely not enough. There is no way. He can only remove some things that are temporarily unusable. It can only be said that his previous planning still has a big problem. Not only is there a shortage of food, but even the materials are not enough. Part of the reason for this is that the sudden addition of Kent and others broke his original plan. The other part is that he himself is still not good at planning this kind of materials, mainly because it involves a lot of numbers and calculations. This is really Kai's hard work. He was not good at mathematics since he was a child, and it is even more so now. Because of the problems in the estimation of various materials, not only food, drinking water and various material reserves, but also now there are shortages. Fortunately, the problem of drinking water was quickly solved not long ago. The problem of materials is easy to talk about mineral materials, but things like rubber and plastics are no way. You can only remove some things that are not currently available. Return some materials. With materials and a good anti-nuclear suit, Kai finally put down the last channel. Then he passed through the isolation door, entered the garage, and installed the last part of the message equipment and water supply and drainage equipment, and cleaned himself and the entire room on one side. In this way, if he wants to go out later, he can directly pass through it. The passage from the shelter directly to the garage is not so troublesome to go out and back. Finished. Wiping a handful of non-existent sweat, and Kai looked at the garage in front of him with a sense of accomplishment. Through his sight, he can see many things that others can't see. Garage, facilities, durability, 47,005,000, can store 3 cars, in order to open the convenient access function. Close black lens bracket. Air conditioning, facilities, durability, 29,953,000, can exchange air, and provide oxygen necessary for the life of 10 people. Close black lens bracket. Isolation door, facility, durability, 29,503,000, can isolate the space, isolate all harmful substances to the other side of the door. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket washing nozzles, facilities, durability, 30,003,000, can wash away all harmful substances and prevent them from spreading in the shelter. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket dryer, equipment, durability 25,002,500, can quickly dry the excess water in the room. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket sewage floor drain, facilities, durability 15,001,500. Close black lens bracket. These facilities were just made by him. Except for the room itself, it can be seen that the durability of some facilities is full because they have not been used yet. However, the durability of the air conditioner and the durability of the isolation door have decreased. For the air conditioner, as long as it is opened here, you can start using it immediately. Although it can also be turned off, it does not make much difference. After all, the main working part of the air conditioner is the main unit, and the main unit, as long as it protects everyone's life, it needs to be used all the time. It's impossible to close when it's on. If the isolation door is opened and closed, the durability will be reduced by 50 points. A door can only be opened 60 times when it is fully opened. This is actually quite a durability. Therefore, the doors in the main life space of the shelter are generally not closed. If there is an emergency, they can all be closed instantly, as long as there is a control room. The control room was no longer within the scope of Ankai's construction at first, because he felt that it was of little significance at first. Later, after reading it carefully several times, he discovered that the control room was still very useful. Although each facility can be controlled individually, it is the most convenient to control things like air conditioners, water supply, electrical circuits, and thermostats. It is basically a one-key operation, which is very simple. This control room is actually a blunt room. It doesn't take too much floor space. Of course, in order to be able to expand in the future, he put this room next to the bedroom, and there are no other rooms around it for the time being. After finishing these projects, Kai can finally take a break. First, turn on the cleaning nozzle to wash off the radiation dust that may exist on the body and in the room, and then dry it again. After confirming that there is no problem, then he took off the anti-nuclear suit and placed it in the metal cabinet next to it. Then he opened the isolation door of the garage and returned to the main body of the shelter. The isolation door at the back must be closed at all times. In fact, not only here, but the isolation door behind the door of the shelter is also closed for a long time. These 2 doors are considered as the most important isolation measures of the shelter. The other doors can be kept wide open. These 2 doors must be closed at all times. After returning to the main body of the shelter, he walked straight to the restaurant on the 2nd floor. The 1st floor and the 2nd floor are counted down. When you enter from the gate, the main rooms are all down. If you go up, there is only one observation deck. The 2nd floor is mainly the dining room, bedroom, washroom, bathroom, water purification room and planting room. These rooms are either important to daily living or consume a lot of water, and they are all concentrated on the 2nd floor. Entering the restaurant, the area of the restaurant is smaller than a standard room. There are 3 tables, an open kitchen, and a relatively large island. Emma is here every day, cleaning every day, and then responsible for the 3 meals. After a day, the time is almost the same. At the same time, she is also responsible for part of the bedroom cleaning work. After all, her job is still a little easier than others. Emma, a cup of tea. And Kai waved to Emma. Okay. Emma smiled at him. Emma is the youngest member of the Kent family. She is 17 years old this year. She is about the same age as Carter's eldest daughter Ari. If it weren't for the end, she would still go to school at her age. The Kent family's parents died earlier, so without the care of their parents, this family is actually quite precocious. Even though Emma was only 17 years old, she was already able to help a lot in her daily life. Not to mention, she did a pretty good job of cooking alone. Although it is far from being compared with the chef, it is not a problem to make some simple meals, and her work is more certified. If no one comes here, she will take the trouble to clean and try to ensure every corner of the restaurant. They are all clean, nothing else. This alone makes Kai very satisfied with her. The little girl has a more cheerful personality. Although she has experienced the end of the world, she is very optimistic about life. A short brown hair looks a little capable, and there are some small freckles on his little nose. Everyone else thinks it is very cute. Anyway, in terms of Kai's aesthetics, he is more difficult to accept freckles. Of course, if the little girl looks good or not, it has nothing to do with him. Anne, are you done up there? Not long after, Emma held a teacup and placed it in front of Kai. It's the kind of Western afternoon teacup. In addition to the teacup, Emma also brought a small plate of biscuits. It's about the same specifications as afternoon tea. Of course it can't be compared with the afternoon tea before the end, but in the current environment, he is the only one who can enjoy this kind of treatment. Even if Kent comes over, don't expect Emma to give him cookies. Don't let your tongue say anything. In fact, everyone respects and appreciates Kai very much. After all, he brought everyone here and lived a stable life for the time being. What's the situation outside? You can imagine it even if you don't go out, and before the nuclear explosion, it's not peaceful outside, let alone the threat of zombies. Even eating and drinking water sometimes becomes a problem. Emma has a few big brother shelters. She didn't endure much hardship, but she didn't enjoy much. At the very least, it was the shelter of the Simpsons at that time, but it was actually not stable. Everyone can be said to have been in fear. His neck was bitten by a zombie in his sleep. But there is no such worry here. Even a nuclear explosion can't threaten them, let alone ordinary zombies. With a stable living environment and food that can fill their stomachs, they have fun in their spare time in life, and they can also learn knowledge. To be honest, if the underground space is not a little boring, it is actually the same as the life before the end. The difference is really not that big. So everyone is willing to give more things to Kai when they can, such as this biscuit. In fact, now that the food crisis has begun, it shouldn't be taken out casually. But who made Kai come today? Emma quietly called the shots. It's already done. When your big brother comes back, you can enter the shelter directly from the garage. Kai said with a smile. Reached out and picked up the remote control on the dining table, and pressed it against the corner TV. The TV immediately turned on and contained a previously paused movie. Come over and watch it together. Come, you can eat too, don't clean it, take a rest. Kai turned to Emma and said. Of course he has a TV set. Now that he has electricity, he should also use the TV set to enrich everyone's life. The movies played on the TV are played on the DVD player. These things are all searched before. Kai can do it himself, but there is no need for it. Emma didn't refuse, and sat beside Kai obediently, watching the movie with him. After drinking a pot of tea and watching the movie he hadn't watched before, Kai had not had time to get up, the restaurant door was pushed open, and Kent strode in. Anne, find something, come and take a look. The oxygen cylinders they carry in Kent are only enough for them to use for a few hours. Fortunately, they returned along the same route, so before the oxygen was completely used up, they returned to the shelter. But even so, it took a lot of time to go back and forth. As a result, the search time was forced to shorten, so that in the end, enough supplies were not obtained. This is also impossible, Kai can't do more advanced oxygen cylinders. He has been gaining experience recently. As long as he upgrades, he will add to the Wisdom Master Plan. His goal is simple, to start the Engineer 5th level as soon as possible. Only when he reaches the highest level of engineers can he truly produce valuable things, especially in such an environment today. The various manufacturing projects that a 4th level engineer can provide are no longer enough. The need for a shelter is gone. So upgrading is currently the most urgent thing. Without reaching the 5th level engineer, he can't make a higher-level anti-nuclear suit, and even higher-level oxygen cylinders are useless. The time spent searching out will inevitably be affected. This is certain. And the time spent on the road, this is also difficult to change, unless he goes out in person to pave a road to the riverside area. But Enkai can't do this yet. On the one hand, I won't say anything about the consumption of materials. On the other hand, he is not suitable to go out now. As the leader of the shelter, as Kent said, his safety is the most important thing, any act that brings him danger is forbidden. In addition, although paved roads can be convenient for one's own passage, it is also easy to be caught by the enemy and find traces all the way. Of course, this is not really important. After all, there are almost no people who dare to hang around outside. In short, the combination of several reasons led Kent and Curry to search out this time, and the results were very small, which seemed ridiculous. In terms of food, they only found a few breads, some vacuum-packaged food, and 3 lucky cans that were not destroyed. This is the main gain. In addition, the weapon was not found, and a little bit of the tool was found. The materials are almost all tattered garbage. Of course, it's not that the materials are garbage, but the current state of these materials, just like garbage. For example, cans that are crumpled into a ball, such as torn wooden boards that are obviously covered with scorch marks, such as rotten clothes, and all kinds of twisted and deformed scrap metal, are indeed rubbish. But they are also useful. The medicine was not found, and some seeds were found, but the system prompted the status to be radiated, and I don't know if it can be used. As for those relatively scarce materials, unfortunately, Kent did not find them. Time is not allowed. The nuclear explosion also destroyed most of the city's things. Those former factories and facilities have more than 8 achievements in the nuclear industry. Disappeared during the explosion, and what is left is only some parts of remote areas. This is very depressing. As the saying goes, it is difficult for a clever woman to cook without rice. Even if Enkai has a system, it is nothing without materials. He can produce some materials by himself, such as ore, but he definitely needs to search for some materials from outside, such as wood, plant fiber, etc. Fortunately, the demand for wood and plant fiber is gradually decreasing. Nowadays, most of the construction and decoration of the shelter still use wood as materials, but with subsequent continuous upgrades, some artificial synthetic materials will gradually occupy the mainstream until the original materials such as wood are completely replaced. Of course, this requires a process, not overnight. In short, there are very few gains from going out today, and Enkai is somewhat disappointed, but this is also in his expectation. After all, the world has now changed from the zombie apocalypse to a nuclear explosion wasteland. The changes in the external environment will definitely bring changes in all aspects of life. People in the last days still need to adapt more. Pack it up. These things have all been washed once, including the car. Enkai can directly use the quick transfer function of the shelter to transfer the materials from the truck to the warehouse, but he did not do this. Instead, he asked everyone to carry it manually. This is also a kind of work. Let everyone be the shelter. And development is doing its best, not to mention that these things are not heavy, and it is not too late to use this function when you find something heavier in the future. Kent and Curry, who had been busy all day long, were hungry and thirsty. After moving the materials, the two of them took a shower and then came to the restaurant for the first time. Others also came over and began to enjoy today's second meal. Yes, the shelter has now changed from 3 meals a day to 2 meals a day. The main thing is that there is not enough food and we must save some. In fact, it's okay to continue to eat 3 meals a day. It's just to reduce the amount of each meal. Eating less and more meals is healthier than eating more and less meals, but the latter is more likely to bring satisfaction. Now they can pursue not the kind of high-end healthy eating habits. Satisfaction can affect a person's mood. In today's relatively depressing environment, a good mood is obviously more important. Therefore, Enkai would rather let everyone eat less, but also ensure that every meal can be full. What's more, in fact, they don't have much coolie work to do. Most of the work in the shelter has been semi-automated, and it can be operated with only one button without too much labor. I am afraid that only those who go out to search need more food, and those who stay in the shelter will exercise less themselves, and there is no problem in eating less. During the meal, everyone was in a good mood. Others curiously asked Kent and Curry about the process of their outing search. Kent and Curry also spoke briefly. When they said that they almost fell into the deep ditch, the others couldn't help but whispered, mainly women and men, everyone was calmer. After all, Kent and the others came back alive, it must show that they didn't really fall in. When Kent said that the scene they saw in the riverbank was like the underworld, everyone was a little silent. In fact, everyone knows what the world will look like after the nuclear explosion, but without investigation, there is no right to speak, and after all, they have not seen it with their own eyes, and there is always no real feeling. But as Kent and Curry talked about it, a picture of purgatory slowly unfolded, and everyone realized more deeply how important it is to have a safe enough shelter. Everyone is grateful that they have joined Ankai's shelter, otherwise, at this moment, their fate must not be better, and they may even have died under the nuclear explosion. Ankai was sitting next to him drinking coffee. He didn't say much. He didn't need to use words to express his own greatness, or to pursue everyone's gratitude. Everyone needed his protection, he also needed everyone's help, and counted on him alone. He couldn't support such a large shelter, so everyone helped each other after all. Others are indeed lucky, there is nothing to say about this, only chances are. During the meal, everyone was chatting and the atmosphere was very good. The main reason, of course, is the existence of Ankai. As the leader of the sanctuary, Ankai is relatively aloof. Several other groups or individuals are subordinate to him. Everyone is equal to each other, so there is nothing. You suppress me or I overtake you. Without interest entanglements, naturally there will be no conflicts of all kinds. Secondly, it is also because these people are relatively good people. Whether it's Mary or Philip, whether it's the Curry or the Browns, including the Simpsons who have only recently joined the shelter, to put it bluntly, although everyone's personalities are different, such as Mary's, it's a bit too cold to be honest. Like Leo, the poison tongue attribute is generally difficult to be accepted by everyone, but it is undeniable that even if they are as cold as Mary or poisonous like Leo, they are not bad in themselves. This point is very important. People like this group have never stopped fighting and fighting within the ethnic group since ancient times. As large as a country or as small as a small group, it is inevitable that there will be all kinds of contradictions, which may be relatively minor and not worth mentioning. But it can also be very serious, and even fight each other. In fact, in other shelters, all kinds of contradictions have never been lacking. It may be the contradiction between the leaders, it may be the contradiction between the middle level, the lower level also has the contradiction, and even the cross-class. If it were not for the suppression of the leadership relationship, I am afraid it would have been contradictory. In the final analysis, on the one hand, there is a lack of people's minds, and on the other hand, it is also driven by interests. But these problems do not exist in Ankai's shelter. There is no doubt that he is the only leader of this shelter. And all the people around him have guaranteed him enough loyalty. This is verified and recognized by the system, and no one can change it. As long as Ankai didn't do anything wrong with the anger and grievance, the loyalty of the members of the sanctuary would not easily drop. As long as their loyalty is still positive, they will be loyal to Ankai. This kind of loyalty certainly does not mean that they will become puppets, nor does it mean that Ankai can unconditionally manipulate them, but loyalty can ensure that everything is based on the overall tranquility of the shelter, so even if it is the same as other shelters, there are various factions among members. But for the peace of the shelter, they will also suppress these contradictions and ensure the stability of the shelter as much as possible. What's more, everyone is a good person. In fact, there is no contradiction. Therefore, there is harmony in the shelter, and the relationship between all members is quite good. Another very important point is the life environment provided by the shelter itself. In fact, in many shelters, there are many internal contradictions. In the final analysis, it is the interests of the people, and the reason why everyone has conflicts in terms of interests. The fundamental reason is that the resources are limited. In the limited resources, anyone desires to get more parts, which cannot help but conflicts of interest and then turn into contradictions. But this is not a big problem in Ankai shelter. Although everyone lacks food and drink nowadays, there is no shortage of drinking water and medicine. Life resources are also not lacking, and food is slightly less, but as long as compared with other shelters, compared with other people immediately after the nuclear explosion, life here is already it's almost like heaven. Even people who have no conscience anymore don't think there is anything wrong with isekai as a refuge. Therefore, in order to be able to better enjoy the current stable life, everyone actively maintains the tranquility of the shelter, coupled with the restrictions of loyalty, and the end result is that the shelter is peaceful and happy, and everyone has no contradictions. This is very rare in such a doomsday world. And Kai is also very satisfied with the current atmosphere in the shelter, which is what he has always been looking forward to. After eating, Emma went to wash up, Joanna went to help, Kent and Curry exchanged Philip and George back, and the two of them sat at the table and started eating. Carter is busy with his own work. He is mainly responsible for the operation and daily maintenance of the power station. In fact, he does not need to stare at all times, but he is not good at fighting, but he is an extremely serious and responsible person at work, so as long as he has time, he will go to generate electricity. Stand guard over there and make various adjustments and maintenance in time. Carol started teaching every day, and her 3 children, as well as Emma who finished washing the dishes, had to attend classes. Even if it is the end of the world, as long as the life environment is stable, learning should not stop. If in peace times, learning is to give oneself a better future and to find a better job in the future, then in the doomsday age, learning knowledge is for the survival of Ascension own. Joanna and Mary were also asked by Ankai to study. Although they are relatively old and have passed compulsory education, it is always right to review the past and learn the new. It is always right to review the previous knowledge. It's a pity that there are currently no university-level teachers in the shelter. Carol can only support up to high school level at most, and it is divided into subjects. She can't teach most subjects, and can only provide some help nearby. Mary and Joanna both reviewed their previous knowledge on the one hand, and on the other hand they also used the good learning atmosphere in the classroom to learn some higher level content on their own. And Kai is fine now. His main job now is to coordinate the work of the entire shelter. The content is relatively simple. On the one hand, it is to control the console in the control room to control the various facilities in the shelter relatively macroscopically. On the other hand, it is to open up more rooms to make the scale of the shelter bigger. What's the use of more rooms? In fact, it is very useful. Breeding and planting still need to continue to expand in scale, which is far from enough now. It's not that they can eat, but that there are a lot of things that need to be grown besides the most basic food. With a variety of fruits and vegetables, more meat and eggs, he will even try to plant fruit trees in the future, all of which require space. In addition, for the manufacturing part, machine tools are needed, electric furnaces are also needed, broadcast rooms are also needed, clothing rooms are also needed, and vehicle manufacturing rooms are also needed in the future. It can be said that he needs to get a lot of things, and he has to get more experience, and strive to reach the 5th level engineer as soon as possible. This is all a matter. Of course, these tasks will be carried out little by little in the future, and he does not need to force himself to hurry. So in his spare time, he will take a break. Go back to the living room and turn on the wall-mounted TV. The floor is a soft rubber floor. It is very comfortable to step on. You can also sit on the floor without worrying about the cold air coming up. So he sat on the ground, plugged in the game console, and started playing games every day. The game in this world is very interesting. There was no conditions or time before, but as the shelter gradually stabilized, his love for games involuntarily jumped up again. Press to start someone who likes to play games. Whether it is standalone games, online games, mobile games or console games, he likes them very much. In addition, he is more or less involved in arcade games and handheld games. Although he doesn't play much, he still has a certain understanding. He used to have several changes in playing games. Arranged according to the timeline, the first one he played was undoubtedly the red and white game. In fact, to put it bluntly, it is not very different from the arcade game. When he entered junior high school, small internet cafes and black internet cafes began to gradually appear around him, and he was also taken by children older than him in the compound to secretly go to the internet cafe to play games. At first, I played classic standalone games such as Red Hollow Circle Alert, Sea Hollow Circle, Magical Beasts Hollow Circle, and Empire Hollow Circle Generation. Later, it began to fully enter the era of online games. Back then, there were really many online games, with a complete range of types, such as dancing, racing, and fantasy adventures. As long as they were more famous in the market, he played almost all of them. At that time, he was in college and he was free from the shackles of his parents, so the whole person was relatively free. On the basis of not delaying his studies, and Kai was really crazy during his college years. After graduating from university and starting to work, he gradually lost interest in online games. It's not that I'm not completely out of touch. It's just that the new generation of online games generally give people a mediocre feeling, and to be honest, with the gradual popularity of mobile games, PC-side online games have indeed been greatly impacted, and many established game manufacturers have begun to fry. The game performance is worse than a year. At this time, Ankai began to contact mobile games, and began to contact single-player games on the PC side. I have to say, in terms of picture quality, gameplay, and plot, standalone games are indeed more powerful than online games as a whole. After all, the operating models of the two parties are different, and the focus is also different. Before crossing, Ankai started to come into contact with console games. He was not unwilling to do so before. He was really shy after graduation, and he was more or less dissatisfied with console games in his heart. It was only after real contact that I found out that in terms of screen effects, the console game is really awesome. The same picture quality, if you want to use a PC to perform, then the configuration is probably too high. However, it is understandable that after all, the console is bought to play games, so there is a specialization in the art industry. When the computer is out of the game, it can also do other things, so naturally it cannot be placed on the same level as the console that focuses on game performance. In fact, the two sides shouldn't be compared at all. Although they belong to the game realm, they also have completely different focuses. Having said so much, in the final analysis, Ankai has feelings and attitudes towards games. Now that he has traveled to such an otherworld with a system on his body, he once brought the real world into the game. He has played a lot of similar games before. Seventh Hollow Circle, People Hollow Circle, Green Hollow Circle Prison, Hollow Circle Forest. Although different games have different plots and expressions, the content is always the same, but it is collecting resources, building houses, manufacturing items, destroying enemies, etc., are generally inseparable from the label of survival or doomsday survival. It can be said that his life at this time has become a large-scale game, but this game is more dangerous. If you are not careful, the cost will be his own life. But other than that, just such a live-action survival game can't satisfy his ambitions. To say that the greatest novelty of Otherworld for him is, it is absolutely necessary to talk about the game of this world. Different worlds and different civilizations have similar development directions, but people's creativity are different. Therefore, games in this world are bound to be different from those in previous lives. It is a pity that for a long time before, he was rushing to survive, and there was a period of leisure in the middle, but at that time he lacked the necessary equipment and was unable to produce electricity, so naturally he could not use equipment such as televisions or computers. It wasn't until the current sanctuary city got up, the generator set was put down, and since then he was able to produce electricity on his own. He was finally able to satisfy his own small wish. Playing games has always been Ankai's insistence. Now he is opening a game called Shortwind Boy. The platform is a game device similar to the console, the screen is quite exquisite, and the plot is also awesome. Probably the content of the plot is that the boy under his control has been attacked by magical beasts in the Village of Life. Although magical beasts was repelled, the villagers suffered heavy casualties. At first, the teenager needs to go to the wild to collect various resources, repair the broken walls and buildings, and gather enough herbs and food so that the villagers can recover from their injuries and live well. Next, he needs to go to the nearest city and seek help from the Lord. The plot is actually not complicated, but there are so many side missions. If all the plots add up and all the levels are cleared, it will take hundreds of hours of game time. And the content of this game is also very rich. There are RPG adventures, there are also some small games like dancing, racing, skiing, etc. There are real-time strategy gameplay to resist the invasion of magical beasts, and gameplay of simulated survival and construction. In short, if this game is more like a game in the previous life, he thinks it is probably a series of games such as Give Him Love, plus Yamaguchi Mountain, plus Kart, plus King Group, plus Wilder, aggregate. Because Enkai just had electricity not long ago, Enkai didn't actually play for a long time. It may be less than 30 hours of game time. At present, he has seen so much game content. Will there be more games in the future? There are many game elements, he doesn't know at present, can only say that he is very looking forward to it. Unfortunately, there are very few people who can play games with him. This game supports multiplayer online or LAN connection. It is not impossible to be regarded as a kind of online game. Unfortunately, the internet is no longer available. If the local area network is used, the shelter can be built. The problem is that they are willing to play games with him. There is only the little guy Alex, but he is too young. Carter and Carol have very strict controls on Alex, just like Enkai's parents back then. Even if it is the end of the world, you must study hard. At other times, you also need to exercise or work, and they absolutely do not support such playful behavior as playing games. Enkai can't say anything about this. Everyone has a different way of education. How Carter and Carol educate Alex is their own business. Although Enkai is the leader of the sanctuary, he is not a dictator, and it is impossible to force the other party to do whatever he wants because of his own little hobby. The two of them guarded the game like a scourge. No matter whether it was right or wrong, Enkai had no position to express his opinions. In addition, Curry can also play with him, but unfortunately, as a member of the protection team, Curry has to continue to strengthen himself in addition to the duties of guards, so he spends more of his own time on exercise and contact shots. In the final analysis, is the game useful? Of course there are. The environment in the shelter is like this. They are underground, depressed, and not seeing the sun. They need more entertainment means to relax. Reading is a good choice, but obviously not everyone likes it. You can listen to music, or watch movies or TV shows. In fact, it's not much different from playing games. And by contrast, the time that can be lost after a game is installed with a data packet of the same size is obviously longer than that of a movie or a TV series. For a game with a few hundred hours of plot, if the size of the data packet is converted into a movie, it is probably only a few dozen hours of the market. When converted into a TV series, it can be slightly longer, but it is far from being compared with the game. In the previous exploration and search process, Enkai also found a large number of various CDs, which contained all kinds of content, but after all, the total number is limited. And many movies and TV shows are actually worthless after watching them once, and most people are reluctant to watch them a second time. As for the game, if it is a multiplayer online game, you can play a lot of tricks. This is definitely not as simple as playing with things, it is actually very helpful for the construction of spiritual civilization in the shelter and the relaxation of everyone's mood. But Enkai will not say anything now. After all, the shelter has not been established for a long time, and the members have not felt too much pressure. With the passage of time, in such a life environment, their psychological pressure will definitely continue to ascension. At that time, even people who no longer like games will accept these things a little bit, and what he has to do now, is to lead by example, use leisure time, take the lead in setting an example. Let other people look at it, and when they have needs in this area, they will naturally think of these things. To put it bluntly, this is a subtle influence process. There is only Enkai in the living room. He is sitting on the ground and having fun. And when I was overjoyed with a small super weapon that I just hit, Kent's figure suddenly sounded in the shelter. Somebody is coming. After that, there were waves of sirens. In the next second, all doors leading to the main life area were automatically closed, and Enkai immediately jumped up from the ground and ran out quickly. He did not go to the passage, but entered the elevator for the first time and went to the observation deck. In the two-person patrol plan, one person is in charge of the passageway, and the other is in charge of the observation deck. The observation deck is equipped with thermal binoculars, which can observe distant heat sources in this invisible environment. Determine the identity of the other party. Now it was Kent who was watching from the observation deck, and he had discovered the enemy. When Enkai came up, Philip was already here. How many people? Do you have any weapons? What direction is he moving? Is he coming for us? As soon as Enkai came up, he took a telescope and started to observe while asking. In the lens of the telescope, Enkai saw several red dots far away. The telescope in his hand is an infrared thermal telescope, which can magnify 15 times. In other words, it can zoom an object from a kilometer away to 70 or 80 meters. Of course, as far as Enkai knows, there is no so-called thermal telescope on the Earth in the past. The most common one is a night vision device, which can magnify up to 2 or 3 times. So this one in his hand was actually manufactured through a system, and its size is considered a black technology. Through this telescope, he can clearly see objects far away, and can distinguish whether the opponent is a rock or a person. Now he saw 6 figures. The figure walking upright obviously cannot be a gorilla. Fortunately, the outside temperature is all below zero, and there is no light, so he can easily distinguish the other party through the telescope. The people who are active at this time, are they survivors? Enkai whispered softly. It should be. I'm afraid it's a person who won't live long. What shall we do? Philip looked at Enkai. This is also a problem that all living people must face in the end times. If someone can live relatively securely, someone must live extremely hard. At this time, a seemingly simple choice is often a test of human nature. But Enkai certainly can't make fun of himself and the lives of his companions. If they turn halfway, don't worry about it. If they want to enter the shelter, they will be expelled. If they don't listen to advice, they will shoot. Enkai's voice was a bit cold, as if a stone was pressed in his throat. He is not a cold-blooded animal, but the more this is the time, the less kind he can't be. What's more, what is the environment outside now? This is the world after the nuclear explosion, with radioactive dust everywhere. For these people who are outside, Enkai does not deny that some people may be lucky enough to get anti-nuclear suits, but he is even more convinced that more than 90% of survivors can't get these things. Even in the peaceful age, not everyone can obtain nuclear protective clothing. Now that the world has experienced 2 waves of apocalypse in succession, how many nuclear protective clothing can survive? Enkai can make anti-nuclear suits through the system, so others can only go out and look for them. What should I do if I can't find it? You can only expose yourself to radiation dust. Suffering from radiation all the time. Don't think about the final outcome of these people, they must be suffering from radiation sickness and die within a short period of time. Now that it is a mortal ending, Enkai will not let them harm the own shelter anyway. What's more, there is already a food crisis in his own shelter, so even if the other party has anti-nuclear clothing, he will not accept newcomers in a short time. Okay, I understand. Philip nodded and went straight down the elevator. Although the defense team was divided into 2 teams, now that there may be an invasion by foreign enemies, everyone must be prepared. Standing on the observation deck is impossible to attack, so Enkai and Kent can only observe with a telescope here. Observe the movements of the people below. A total of 6 figures, 4 large and 2 small, swayed through the hills in the distance. After a short while, they arrived near the top of the hill where the shelter was located. Enkai quietly squeezed the hand holding the telescope. At this moment, his heart was a little nervous. Of course, he was definitely not worried that the other party could break the shelter. Just kidding, the thick mountain and the protective door that is more explained than the bank's vault door. If only a few people can easily destroy it, then he simply ran out without wearing anything now. Of course, if the opponent has some powerful weapons, it is not impossible to break through the shelter, but defensive weapons have been installed outside the shelter door. Although there is no installation on the garage door, the distance between the 2 doors does not count. The distance is only a dozen meters in a straight line. The 2 automatic machine guns can cover the entire area within 180 degrees ahead, so as long as these people dare to approach a distance of 100 meters, they can easily shoot the opponent's shot. What he is worried about now is that these people will actually come by unknowingly. If they are really just the most ordinary survivors, how would they choose after knowing that there is a shelter here? Thinking in another way, Enkai felt that if it were own, he would definitely come forward and ask for help. But in this situation, Enkai obviously couldn't open the door for them, and he also gave an order to expel them if they approached, and to shoot if they couldn't expel. In other words, if these people continue to approach, even if they are harmless survivors, the end result definitely will not be too good. If the 2 sides are enemies, even if there are more people, Enkai can comfortably beat them into a sieve, but if it is not an enemy, Enkai really does not want to shoot these people from his side. So now he only hopes that these people can't find the shelter and can leave obediently. However, what he thought was very good, but the two metal doors on the mountain were still too conspicuous. Even if there is almost no light outside, it is not completely black. After the sunlight passes through the thick radiation cloud, some of it can enter the atmosphere more or less, so after about half an hour, with a few shots, the red figures fell down and quickly became dim. Call. And Kai sighed softly. These are all for the peace and security of the shelter, you don't have to take it to heart. Kent probably understood Kai's feelings and offered to comfort him. Although he used to be a firefighter with a mission to save people, he is also a person, and he also has his own feelings and ideas. He knows how to choose between the lives of himself and little brother, little sister, and the lives of outsiders. I understand, I just suddenly felt a little emotional. Don't worry, I'm fine. And Kai is definitely not a virgin, he is just a little uncomfortable, and it will not affect his mood because of this kind of thing. Resolving a few wandering survivors is obviously not a big deal for the shelter. The alarm has actually been lifted long ago, and other people have not paid attention to what happened outside. And Kai left the observation deck, returned to the shelter, and continued to play the game. But now he didn't really have the mind to fight anymore. After playing for a while, he took the initiative to shut down the game, put away the game console, and then went to the fourth underground floor. This is the factory area he plans in the future. All large-scale production equipment will be placed here. At this time, there is only one room with elevators. Kai turns on the system, selects the room, and prepares for construction. But at this moment, he suddenly discovered that there was something new in the construction project. Open black lens bracket factory, production building, can be adapted for transformation. Materials needed: cement, metal, rubber. This. And Kai blinked, opened the system log, and saw a record in it. This record appeared yesterday, but he did not find it at the time. The main content of the record is to tell him that his shelter has met the upgrade needs, and the system has opened up the second phase of the shelter construction project. The main content of the second stage project is professional rooms, that is, special factories, special farms, special pastures, etc. If it is the first stage, Kai also needs to set up and place equipment after building the room, including pulling wires and water pipes and other facilities. He has to do it himself. The second stage professional room provided him with various templates. As long as he had enough materials, he could directly manufacture related rooms. For example, this most basic factory is actually the initial template for all factories. It can be set directly during construction, and the system can be adapted to be modified during the construction process. For example, transforming into a drug production factory, for example, transforming into a firearms production factory, for example, transforming into a car production factory, and automatically arrange various equipment and facilities in accordance with relevant requirements. It can be said that it is a complete one-click construction, and it is more foolish, further. The biggest advantage of this is that it makes better use of space and saves Kai's own design troubles. Moreover, the automatic layout of various pipelines is also conducive to the cleanliness and safety of the room, which is also very important. Especially for the water circuit, if you are not a professional, you will inevitably have a safety hazard if you are not a professional. Even if the system can provide buried wire operation, it is difficult to guarantee that there will be no problems. With the two-stage construction method, such problems can be further reduced. All in all, this change is very good. After reading the system log, Kai was more satisfied, and opened the construction list again and pulled out the factory directly. A huge blue model appeared in front of him, and the room model that appeared this time could not adjust the scale, because this template was completely fixed. Setup: a first-level bullet production workshop. Kai read silently in her heart. In the next second, the model began to change on its own, and a bullet production line appeared in the room. From the loading port to the gunpowder filling device, from the bullet pressing device to the bullet outlet, it includes the crawlers, simple manipulators and wires required by the production line. All are set in place at one time, and the wires are also actively connected to the main line together. The whole process only took less than 1 minute. 1 minute later, Kai silently confirmed in his heart that this huge model of the room was firmly attached to the elevator room where Kai was. Then materials began to emerge from midair, and were quickly thrown into the model. At a speed visible to the naked eye, the room that was originally just a model began to become solid. At the same time, various materials appeared in the air and were quickly sent back to the warehouse. In about a few minutes slower than the original manufacturing room, a brand new bullet production workshop appeared in Ankai before. Ankai has used a machine tool before, which can manufacture bullets, but the manufacturing speed is relatively slow, and it supports very few types and models, which is not particularly practical. It's just that at the time, the equipment of that level was pretty good. At least it gave him the ability to make bullets by himself, instead of going out to find bullets like other survivors. He didn't dare to even have a gun. Shoot casually, let alone waste bullets. It can be said that in the several conflicts that broke out in the riverside area, Ankai can easily defeat its opponents, relying on this ability to make bullets and bombs by itself. Just how to put it, the machine tool is not bad. In fact, the speed of the machine tool to produce bullets can also meet his current needs. But Ankai chose the bullet production line for a very simple reason. On the one hand, the faster the manufacturing speed, the greater the output. The second is the comprehensive expansion of bullet models, from pistols to shotguns to sniper rifles, including small caliber shells, which can be placed on the manufacturing list from now on. Finally, there is the issue of cost performance. If you use a machine tool to produce the same number of bullets, it consumes a lot more materials than the production line. If it was in the past, even if there is a production line, Ankai may not dismantle a separate machine tool. After all, it is all manufacturing. Bullets, as long as the number is sufficient and the model is satisfied, some materials can be obtained by searching. But now it's different. It's not easy to search for materials when going out now, so he naturally needs to work harder to save materials. And to be honest, if the machine tool is placed alone, the aesthetics is definitely not as good as this kind of factory that is directly set by the template. If there is no choice, then Ankai will not say anything, but now he has more. With so many choices, why use machine tools? In addition, the machine tool had already been dismantled during the previous transfer, and now I have to start from scratch anyway, so I might as well do it in one step. A large amount of mineral materials, such as copper, lead, and gunpowder, are used to make bullets. Copper and lead are a bit easier to talk about. There are some in the earth, but the material of gunpowder is a bit troublesome, but the problem is not too big. All in all, it can be said that there are many benefits to making such a bullet production line. And not only the bullet assembly line, the production line of firearms, the production line of circuit boards, and the production line of other electronic components, he will also have to build it out later. On the one hand, he wants to make the own shelter more comprehensive, and all kinds of electronic equipment for daily use must be manufactured. On the other hand, many parts and components needed for future upgrades of the shelter must also be manufactured through these related production lines. In short, he wants there are a lot of things to do, but it can't be satisfied at this level. Of course, these are all things to follow. There are several other things that Ankai currently ranks relatively high on the list of plans. One is the drug production line. It is definitely not enough to rely on a chemical station alone. The reason is similar to the relationship between the machine tool and the production line, and it is also a matter of type and consumption. The second is the canned food production line. Nowadays, the shelter is relatively short of food, but as the crops in the planting house gradually mature, this situation will change. When a large number of agricultural products are produced, only one cold storage is not enough. Some things need to be made into cans for better preservation, and even if it is the end of the nuclear explosion, communication with the outside world cannot be completely cut off. It doesn't matter in a short period of time. If it takes a long time, they will definitely have to contact the outside world. Whether it is communication or exchange of materials, it is indispensable. Therefore, at this time, canned food is very important. It is not only easy to store, but also convenient to carry, and it is not easy to pollute. It is better than pulling a cart of vegetables to exchange supplies. Then, it's the mine. The mine is too important. Once a device that collects materials directly, once it is successfully manufactured, a large part of the material does not need to go out to search for it. This type of ore-related materials, although they can also be obtained when the room is made, and the variety is very rich, but the quantity is too small, and they are not specialized enough to be collected specifically and targeted. In this regard, the emergence of mines and mining equipment is very useful. As long as it is set up, it can automatically find nearby mineral veins. If there are no minerals within a certain radius, the mine can also rely on the power of the system. The things Ankai needs are collected directly out of thin air. Of course, not only has the energy consumption been serious, but the output is also very, very low. But no matter how serious the consumption is and how low the output is, finding it is better than finding it. Apart from other things, if Ankai's shelter continues to develop in the future, after the power generation equipment is upgraded to a nuclear power generator, the materials that need to be used are very small, but they are indeed very difficult to find in the real world. At this time, if there is help from the mine, no matter how large the energy consumption is, it is completely worth it. Ankai understands this very well and knows exactly what he should do. Just when Ankai had successfully manufactured the bullet production line and was about to take a break. In an underground facility in the riverbank area, a group of people are working day and night. How is the research? The metal door opened to the sides, and a group of people in white uniforms walked in. The head is a man with long blonde hair. He is very handsome. If only the facial features are concerned, even the international superstar before the end of the day can't compare to him. But his face is very cold, and there is a kind of indescribable indifference, especially the look in his eyes, which are obviously very beautiful lake blue eyes, but there is no emotion in them. Just looking at such eyes, it makes people feel a little chill from the depths of the soul. It was him who was speaking, and what he asked was a group of researchers who were originally in this room. The relevant data of SPS-3 is still being tested, and it is believed that there will be a major breakthrough soon. The other researchers are all working, but there is only one middle-aged research institute who has not much hair on his head. Pushing his glasses, he replied in a flat tone. And while he was talking, he brought the blonde man to a huge glass. On the other side of the glass is a large space, comparable to an indoor sports field. In the huge room, there is also a group of researchers busy. They lower their heads to operate various equipment and keep collecting various data. The data source is a transparent cage surrounded by these devices. There was a giant in the cage, and while talking, the giant never stopped, yelling and hitting the cage continuously. With every impact, the cage trembled crazily, giving people a feeling that they were about to completely collapse. But this cage is extremely strong. No matter how the monster inside hits it, it won't break. Very well, continue testing, and follow-up research can't be stopped. And I want to remind you that the current progress is a bit too slow. After the nuclear explosion, our test targets have been drastically reduced. Although some of them survived, they couldn't. How long may they die one after another, so there is not much time left for you. If you do not produce results before the experimental materials are dead, what will be the consequences? Don't I need to say more? The blonde man looked at the bald researcher blankly, and said calmly. Although he didn't roar or look ferocious, it was this calm tone that made the institute's forehead sweat. Of course I understand. In fact, I do this all the time. Please tell the adults above and let them rest assured that I know what to do. That's good. The blonde nodded, then looked at the few people who had been following him. How was the person you talked about last time? Is he still alive? Certainly. The answer was a man with eyes, who was also very handsome. He was also followed by a brown-haired woman and a sturdy man. These three are the three who appeared on the scene when Ankai retaliated against Jason. Not only is he alive, he also built a new underground shelter. The group of people in the C&T building were folded over there. The man said with a smile, "Are you going to do it?" I haven't sent anyone to observe recently, and I don't know what's going on with them, but if nothing happens, these people should be alive and well. You reported earlier that they have a lot of weapons. The blonde man asked blankly. Yes, the man in glasses nodded. Pistols, shotguns, submachine guns, rifles, bombs, and a large number of bullets. I doubt that he has found a civilian arsenal, otherwise he could not have such a powerful weapon. Firepower. However, no matter how powerful the firepower is, it is only rootless ping. He has never spared the consumption of this aspect since he eliminated the wild dog gang. Although it looks really fierce, how long can this situation last? I feel that he may not have enough ammunition. If he starts at this time, it will be a good time. You don't need to worry about this kind of thing. The blonde man turned his head back. In the final analysis, it's just a stronger ant. No matter how powerful he has firepower, he will not be able to withstand a blow in the face of a real army. The most important thing for us now is to accelerate the research and development of drugs. As long as we really find the key to open the door, this world will completely fall into the palm of our hands, and a sanctuary in only a small amount of time is not worth mentioning. Yes, the others, including the bald researcher and the three men with glasses, all slapped their faces and responded with fanatical expressions on their faces. Okay, let's go to the next place. Is there any problem with the track system right now? The blonde man turned around and walked out, and while walking, he asked a man in black. It has been confirmed that everything is normal for the rail system to the Aelan Tower. The man in black answered immediately. Very well, then let's go. While talking, the blonde man left with a group of people. In the research institute in this underground facility, there were only a group of researchers and three men with glasses. The man in glasses looked at the back of the blonde man without saying anything, but his eyes flashed with weird light. Of course, Kai didn't know what happened in the underground facilities in the riverbank area. He is now having a headache for one thing. That is which mineral should be selected for the own mine as the object of its mining. The mine can automatically search for all veins within a radius of 100 kilometers and display them on the console. If it is an existing vein, mining is the simplest and the output is also very large. However, if it is a mineral that is not available here, it will be very difficult to mine. According to the scattered reserves in the earth, the difficulty and output of mining are also different. Fortunately, if there are no mineral veins in the local area, then the mining mode is the out-of-the-air collection mode mentioned before. Although the output is indeed very low, it is better than none. Locally, the largest output of ore is actually aluminum ore. Aluminium is a metal used in the aerospace industry with a large amount, and a lot of it is used in the construction and automobile industries. However, the demand for aluminum in the system is not very large, and of course it is not useless. As far as isekai can be manufactured or constructed through the system, aluminum has several uses. First of all, aluminum has a small density, so it is relatively soft, but it can be made into various aluminum alloys, such as duralumin, superduralumin, rust-proof aluminum, cast aluminum, etc. These aluminum alloys are widely used in manufacturing industries such as airplanes, automobiles, trains, and ships. In addition, universe rockets, space shuttles, and satellites also use large amounts of aluminum and its aluminum alloys. In the system vehicles, there are projects for aircraft, cars and ships. As for the aerospace realm, he doesn't know if there will be any in the future, but only the former. The importance of aluminum is enough. Secondly, the conductivity of aluminum is second only to silver, copper and gold. Although its conductivity is only 23 of copper, its density is only 13 of copper. Therefore, the quality of aluminum wire is only half that of copper wire for the same amount of electricity. The oxide film on the aluminum surface not only has the ability to resist corrosion, but also has a certain degree of insulation. Therefore, the electrical system of the shelter also has a demand for aluminum. Again, aluminum is a good conductor of heat, and it is a good choice for making kitchenware. In addition, aluminum has good ductility and can be made into aluminum foil, which can be used for food processing and packaging. Because of the dense oxide protective film on the surface of aluminum, it is not easy to be corroded, so it can also be used to make good fortune reactors, medical equipment, refrigeration devices, etc., which are all within the manufacturing range of the system. Aluminum powder has a silver-white luster and can be used to make coatings. It can be applied to ironware to protect the iron ride from corrosion and be beautiful. In addition, aluminum burning in oxygen can emit a lot of heat and dazzling light, and can be used to make explosive mixtures, such as ammonium-aluminum explosives, combustion mixtures, and lighting mixtures. It is a frequent visitor to the preparation of system weapons. Finally, aluminum has sound-absorbing properties and good acoustics, so aluminum is also used in the ceilings of broadcast rooms and modern large-scale buildings. When the temperature of aluminum is low, its strength increases without brittleness, so it is an ideal material for low-temperature equipment, such as cold storage, freezer, etc. In short, the role of aluminum is very big. It cannot be said that it is indispensable to Ankai's shelter, but it is better than nothing. It's just that the amount of this thing is definitely not as good as iron and copper, so if there are these two minerals, he will be very happy. It's a pity that apart from aluminum, there are no other patches of ore veins within 100 kilometers of this land under your feet, which makes people very depressing. From this perspective, the address of the shelter he chose was really average. But there is no way, who made him not put down the mine earlier? And even though this place is not too good from a mineral point of view, other than that, this shelter is quite good. First of all, in terms of distance, the straight line from the urban area to the river bank is only 10 kilometers, which can be said to be very close. It can be said that it is very convenient to collect materials or supplies nearby. Secondly, this place is a small canyon, the terrain is recessed, there is water resources not much deep underground, to ensure that they will not lack water to drink here. The third point is that the main entrance of the sanctuary is in the shadow of the mountain, and the location of the nuclear explosion is just on the other side. The mountain becomes the best barrier to stop the shock wave of the nuclear explosion. In short, no matter from which point of view, the location of the shelter is actually very good. There are not enough minerals, so we can only use stupid methods. In consideration of the reality that the number of various equipment in the shelter is not enough, and the resources are not rich enough, Ankai is not willing to waste resources in vain, so the direction of mining can only choose aluminum ore. After making your selection, press the mining switch. In the next second, a drill bit penetrated the ground and entered the ground. Like the drill bit of the water purifier, the drill bit of the mine drilling rig also has monitoring equipment, and Ankai can determine the position of the drill bit through the screen. The drill bit first descended linearly. After descending for about a few hundred meters, it paused for a while, and then moved laterally, bypassing the range of the underground river, and then proceeded for a distance of about 1 kilometer, then paused again, and then slanted toward the countryside. Hundreds of meters, and finally stopped slowly. Immediately afterwards, the drill bit rotated on the spot while continuously expanding, creating a circular space with a radius of about 1 meter in the depths of the ground. Then, like a worm, a smaller drill bit emerged from the drill bit that had been opened and fixed. As soon as the drill came out, it pierced directly towards a certain place, and began to spin frantically at a higher speed. Wherever he went, the surrounding rocks were crushed one after another, and then caught by a device similar to a conveyor belt and a vacuum cleaner, and finally sent back to the shelter far and wide. This process lasted a total of about half an hour, and then the gold mining rig next to Ankai opened a hole, and a block of aluminum ore was spit out by the machine. There is also a box below, which is responsible for storing these ores. Once a box is collected, it can be transported away immediately, and then a new box can be placed here. The subsequent smelting is very simple. Electric furnaces or fire furnaces are also acceptable. In short, compared to open-air operations or manual well drilling, this fully automatic drilling is extremely efficient. Leave it alone. A large amount of ore can be collected in a day, too much to use up. Of course, Ankai couldn't really just leave the machine on like this. After staying next to the drilling machine for more than an hour, he got more than 4 boxes of ore. Considering the limited amount of own, he immediately gave the machine to shut down. For the time being, these are enough, and we'll talk about it later when we need it. And he needs to build more drilling machines. After all, the amount of aluminum is not that big. He needs more iron and copper. The mine is mainly composed of 2 parts. One is the transportation pipeline, which needs materials such as rubber, metal and plastic, and the other is the drill bit, which also requires a large amount of metal and needs to be used to make alloys in advance. A complete mine requires a lot of metal. If he hadn't opened up the passage to the garage before, the materials on hand would probably not be enough to make a mine. Now the mine is made, but unfortunately there is only aluminum ore here. Although the mine's verification range is 100 kilometers, 100 kilometers is really not enough for the existence of mineral veins. Of course, under this land, there are other minerals besides aluminum ore, but the output is too small, and it cannot be drilled into a whole vein. If you want to directly mine, it is very difficult, and you need to build multiple mines at the same time. For now, it's not worth the gain. After all, if he wants metal materials, he can get them in the city. Although the city was hit by a nuclear attack, although the power of the nuclear explosion was strong, it was not enough to completely destroy the metal. In the final analysis, the killing points of nuclear bombs are mainly concentrated on high temperature, shock wave and nuclear radiation. High temperature can only melt metal, and shock wave can only blow metal away. Nuclear radiation cannot affect metal, so in addition to nuclear explosion directly outside the main city of the attack, there is still a large amount of metal remaining on the riverside area. The survivors here were not able to make good use of these things before. Now, after the nuclear explosion, almost no one dares to move directly outside. So many materials outside are completely useless, so Enkai only then have the courage to set the first mine's mining object as aluminum ore. After doing this, Enkai temporarily stopped construction. So far, the shelter is relatively comprehensive. Resource collection and life maintenance can be guaranteed. In terms of oxygen supply, he has also upgraded the air purifier. Although the total oxygen supply is not ascension, the purification speed has been accelerated quite a lot, which is equivalent to the oxygen supply of ascension, which is changing direction, and it is enough for now. As for the future, let's talk about it. As the shelter has developed to the present situation, it is no longer necessary for him to tighten his nerves for the time being. As long as it is full, it will continue to develop step by step. In the next few days, the shelter is developing in an orderly manner. The 4 members of the protection team were divided into 2 groups, and they went out to collect materials in turn, and the team staying in the shelter was responsible for the guard work. The others also have their own tasks, each of them performs their own duties, and the entire shelter is very stable. A few days later, Leo, who has been in charge of the breeding house, brought good news to everyone. It was the pigs that Kent brought back, and there was a sow about to give birth. Leo found Enkai first. Enkai was overjoyed when he heard this. To tell the truth, after Kent and the others dared to go out before the nuclear explosion to retrieve some animals, he simply checked some and confirmed that these animals were not infected with the zombie virus, and put them in the breeding. The room did not carefully check the specific conditions of each animal, so he didn't know if any animal in it was pregnant. Now Leo said that he became interested. Apart from anything else, immediately open the system panel and check it. This check confirms that in addition to the sow that is about to give birth, 1 sow and 3 ewes are pregnant. As for other wild animals, there are 1 male, 2 females and 3 snakes, 2 males, 2 females and 4 coyotes, and 2 males, 1 female and 3 rabbits. The only female rabbit among them is also pregnant now. I believe it will be able to give birth soon. In addition, there is a monkey, 2 male dogs, and a female cat. The female cat is also pregnant. This is really lucky, because there is no male cat, so if the female cat is not pregnant, there will be no follow-up development. As for the monkey and the dog, one is only 1, and the other is completely of the same sex, and they have no ability to continue to reproduce. As for the wild animals above, because there are both males and females, as long as they are taken care of, they may continue to reproduce. Coyotes are actually good. They can completely replace dogs and become tool animals in future shelters. Although it is a wild wolf, it can be tamed through the power of the system. Of course, a special upgrade module is required. This module is not yet available to be manufactured, and skills need to be unlocked. At present, Enkai wants to accumulate skill points to upgrade engineer 5th level, so this job cannot be carried out for the time being. He doesn't care either. Even if he can be tamed at the moment, it doesn't make much sense. Even if the wolf is tamed, its main function is to take it out and help hunting or fighting outside. Not to mention waiting for the radiation outside to disappear completely. Even if the radiation clouds in the sky dissipate and the sun shines on the earth again, it is estimated that it will take a long time. Therefore, the shelter is actually not available for this type of animal hunter in a short time. What the shelter is doing now is just saving the next fire. As for cats, it is a good thing that they can reproduce. Although they are also wild cats, they are obviously transformed from domestic cats. As long as you give birth to kittens and take care of them, you can have a brand new domestic cat. The shelter does not need cats to help catch mice, because there are no mice, but cats are still very good as pets. Needless to say, other animals are mainly used to kill meat. Take me to see, Enkai said happily. At the same time, other people were notified through the broadcasting system in the shelter. Except for a few little guys, all the people who can leave their posts at the moment are concentrated in the breeding house. There are a total of 5 rooms in the breeding house. The pigsty is in the second room. A few pigs were slightly thinner when they were caught, and now they have all been eaten back. One of the big sows had an exaggerated belly, and it was the pregnant pig. There are special machines to help the production in the breeding house, so you only need to drive the sows to a fixed position. This job is very simple. With food as the bait, the sow quickly stood on the production position. With the help of the robot, about half an hour later, 12 piglets were born smoothly. These little piglets are full of vitality, and immediately hum and harp to find milk when they are born. The sow after giving birth was a little weak, and the manipulator fed it with food. The sow lay on the ground and kept eating, while the piglet lay on the mother's belly, eating milk happily. This scene, although not very attractive, is quite healing. Especially in this slightly depressed underground space, although Ankai has tried to relieve everyone's pressure, the pressure has accumulated unknowingly. But now, as everyone sees the birth of the little life, and the future meat supply of the sanctuary can finally go on the right track, after being happy, the pressure is immediately relieved, and everyone's faces are much better. Leo, who was very serious, had a rare smile. This is the first little life born in the shelter, and also the first little life born after the nuclear explosion, at least in the shelter. To celebrate, Ankai killed a boar specially. This is the largest pig in the breeding house, weighing several hundred catties, and the oldest pig. Pigs need fresh blood. Like this old pig, you can keep it, and it doesn't matter if you eat it. But today is to celebrate after all, so Ankai has no psychological burden at all. He has the skill of chef, so this celebration meal was all handed over to Ankai to complete. Ankai immediately thought of the pig-killing vegetables he had eaten in the countryside. The so-called pig-killing dish was first popular in the northeast rural areas, and then gradually spread to the whole country, but the most popular place is undoubtedly the northeast region in the previous life. For the rural people in the past, the pig-killing dish was a very important dish. The fat pigs that have been raised for a year are slaughtered, and the meat and oil for the new year and even the following year will be available. In rural areas, slaughtering pigs is very seasonal. Most of them have to enter the 12th lunar month, at least after the winter solstice at the earliest, and before the beginning of spring at the latest. On the one hand, pigs can only grow bigger and save more meat only when they are raised for enough time. Another reason is that people in the village have said that once New Year pigs are slaughtered before the winter solstice and after the beginning of spring, the pork will be stained with spring chi is very bad. This spring breath statement sounds mysterious, but in fact this statement is also the scientific experience of the ancestors through long-term observation of the laws of nature. Farmers' pork is stored for 1 year. In ancient times, was there such a convenient and diverse preservation method as modern? Even with various preservation measures such as pickling, smoked roasting, sealing, and air drying, it is difficult to guarantee that there will be no mildew, maggots, and corruption in the spring and summer. Therefore, people have to find ways to extend the storage period of pork. The period after the winter solstice to the beginning of spring is the lowest temperature of the year. Butchering pork can minimize the temperature. If combined with other fresh keeping technologies, the pork will be broken. The probability will be greatly reduced. Killing pigs is a major family event for a farmer after the winter, and it is also a major event for the whole village. In the past years, there were professional butchers in almost every village. After a family discussed the matter of killing pigs, the first thing was to make an appointment for the butcher, and the second thing was to make an appointment for boiling water. To kill pigs, you need to use a bucket filled with boiling water. Throw the killed pigs into boiling water and scald them. Only after pulling the hairs and skins will they be smooth and clean. The small family only has 1 pot, and the boiling water cannot meet the capacity of the bucket. This requires the neighbors to help boil the water. At that time, 5 or 6 families and 7 or 8 buckets will supply boiled water. After the bucket is scalded and cleaned, the pig is out of the bucket. The first thing the butcher does is to remove the pig's head. The blood shed during pig slaughter is also reluctant to waste. It will be put into a basin, mixed with flour and seasoning, and steamed into blood tofu. The collar meat is also called scalpel meat. The scalpel meat is quickly put in the pot, and the blood tofu is put in the basket at the same time. The owner quickly prepares other ingredients to serve the dishes in the shortest time. When the pork has been cut into pieces and placed neatly, the kitchen is also full of fragrance. Use fat cut meat, red and tender blood tofu, and cabbage, vermicelli, potatoes, golden needles and other ingredients to fish and dragon and reunite. The pig-killing vegetables in the pot are cooked. Of course, this is a relatively simple version. With the development of society, the dishes of pig-killing dishes have gradually become richer. The pig-killing dishes that Ankai has eaten consist of many dishes, large and small. Of course, he doesn't know whether it is authentic or not. He has heard that there is only a smorgasbord of pig-killing dishes, and he has personally tasted pig-killing dishes composed of multiple dishes. Which one is authentic? He, an outsider, really does it. Not sure. Anyway, the one time he had eaten, there were a few very delicious dishes. For example, garlic white meat is cooked with large pieces of pork and sliced into large slices, dipped in salt noodles or garlic sauce, to relieve greasiness and enhance the flavor, the most original and delicious flavor. There is also garlic heart protecting meat. The part of the meat between the pig's heart and liver has a chewy texture. It should also be eaten with garlic sauce. Firewood bones are also used for demolition, which is pure lean meat removed from big bones. Saying, demolition, means that a large piece of lean meat has to be torn apart by hand. Saying, chai, is because the shredded meat will look good after the meat is cooked. The dipping sauce is made from soy sauce, vinegar, chili oil, garlic, mustard, fermented bean curd, sesame sauce, etc. His favorite is a sauerkraut stewed with white meat and blood sausage. The sauerkraut must be made from northeast long cabbage by natural fermentation, and the color is slightly yellow and translucent. The white meat is a large piece of pork belly with skin. The blood sausage should be made with fresh pork blood. Add chopped green onion, salt and other ingredients to season and pour it in casings. When cooking, take a long needle and prick the blood sausage from time to time. When the needle eye does not bleed, it will be out of the pot immediately to ensure the freshness of the blood sausage. These three flavors were simmered in a pot of gurgling, and the fat in the pork had been removed by the sauerkraut. It's a pity that he doesn't have sauerkraut, so he can't make this dish. The process of killing pigs is very simple. It is all mechanized operation. It is very magical. It is obviously a very simple automatic equipment, but in the end, it can even do things like killing pigs, and it does it very well. The whole process, if viewed from Ankai's perspective, is quite fantasy. The pig was pushed into the slaughter room and then dismembered after a few brush strokes. Pig skin, pig bones, pork, pig blood and internal organs were put away separately. Even pig hair and trotters were left behind. Even the stuff in the pig's intestines was cleaned out, and only transported into the biogas converter. However, in the eyes of others, the whole process of killing pigs is very complicated. This is the cognitive distortion of the system to them, and this point need not be introduced. The various ingredients that have been cleaned up are all very clean, and there is no need to clean them again. As the chef, Ankai determines the content of today's meal. First of all, the most important and hardest dish is bone stew. In this respect, the system is very smart, but there is no thorough bone separation, but just like a normal pork chop, a part of the meat is left on the bone. This kind of bone meat tastes the most fragrant. After blanching the big bones, throw them into a large pot, add seasonings such as star anise, pepper, green onion, and soy sauce. Bring to a boil on high heat and simmer for a few hours on low heat. It's almost drooling thinking about it. In addition, he filled with blood sausage, marinated pig head and trotters, made skin jelly on pig skin, made barbecued pork belly, and left a lot of pork, which he put in the cold storage. Such a big pig, if you save a little bit of food, it will be enough for them to eat for a long time. Under the action of the system, the piglets can reach adulthood in only 2 months, and then they can give birth or kill and eat them in a month. So as long as they persist for a while, the shelter will soon be able to live without lack of meat. Life. Chef. The advantage of the skill is that even if Ankai has never done it before, as long as he has eaten it, he can replicate it almost perfectly. And he can also develop new dishes by himself. As long as he has an idea in his mind, he can judge for himself whether the research and development can be successful, and he can always find the right direction during the research and development process. Everyone who ate this meal was full of greasy mouths. To be honest, although the food in the shelter has always been good, there is actually no fresh meat. For a long time, all they ate were canned meat. Canned meat is okay to have an occasional meal, but in the final analysis there is still a lot of starch in it. No matter the texture or taste, it can't compare with fresh meat. Choosing canned meat is really helpless. Now that he finally had fresh meat, Curry even burst into tears in his eyes. Fresh meat can supplement many trace elements required by the human body and provide a large amount of animal protein. The most important thing is that the fat provided by meat can reduce the demand for other things. Why can people eat before? On the one hand, it is because of the huge consumption. On the other hand, it is also because there is no oil and water in the stomach. It is also because there is no oil and water, so the body's digestion speed is very fast, and more food is needed to supplement the body's needs. Because modern people can eat meat with meals, the body is in a state of adequate nutrition for a long time, so the consumption of food is actually constantly decreasing. And eating more meat is definitely better than eating more carb and water, so the supply of meat is actually more important than food supply from a certain point of view. Of course, the premise is that the food can be full. If the food itself is not full, or simply is in a state of scarcity, meat alone will not be able to meet the needs of the body. In short, everyone is very happy to eat pork. The atmosphere of the sanctuary has become a lot lighter and joyous in just one meal. It's a pity that the meat supply in the shelter can't keep up. In a short period of time, everyone has to save food. At least 1/4 later, the meat supply in the shelter can be completely opened. After dinner, Emma and Joanna went to wash the pots and dishes. Enkai called Kent and Philip, and other people who could provide combat power together, and he was about to have a meeting. The main content of the meeting was to clean up the upgraded zombies in the riverside area. Although the nuclear explosion wiped out most of the zombies, there are always lucky ones who can survive. When Philip took turns to collect supplies before, he encountered surviving zombies, and they were upgraded models. Different from the original walking zombies, the upgraded zombies found this time were lying on the ground. Like a spider, their limbs and joints were upgraded, and they moved so fast that they almost injured George. If it weren't for Philip to shoot through the zombie's head 3 times in a row at the critical moment, maybe the shelter would be downsizing. And this is just one of the zombies they found. In fact, this time Philip and George found more than 30 groups of zombies. The existence of these things has seriously affected the collection of materials in the shelter, so Enkai has decided all these zombies must be cleaned up. Calling everyone over is to discuss an appropriate method together. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe.